Previously on the Vampire Diaries.
This humanity, it's killing you. Turn it off! Hey, what's...
He's flipped the switch. Full-blown ripper. Stop looking. Stop waiting. Just stop. Stephanie's gone and he's exhausted.
Turn.
That's right, Stefan, because you love me. You'll fight because after everything that we've been through, you owe me that.
I can't help what I am, Elena.
Hey, what's up you guys, it's me Luke, and welcome back to another video, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. I post commentary videos about movies, TV shows, reality TV, and pop culture. A lot's very nostalgic. I'm a sucker for Y2K 2000s films and 2010s teen TV shows, and today is another installment in my series recapping and deep diving into the Vampire Diaries. Today we are getting into season 3, which is the magnum opus of this show. It's truly where it peaked, so I hope you are ready to sink your teeth into the best season of the Vampire Diaries. Now I know in my season 2 video I said that was the best season, but I said to me personally, and that's because I have a heavy bias because Catherine's my favorite character. But if I'm looking at everything within a season, objectively, the villain, the story arcs, the characters, the relationships, the love triangles, the magic, everything, season 3 is where it's at. I'm so freaking excited to get into this video with you guys. You have no idea. You just don't. But I did want to let you guys know that I'm changing up the format a little bit for season 3, whereas for season 1 and season 2 I did 3 parts per season because they are 22 episode seasons. Season 3 is a little different. Now, I'm still going to be releasing all the videos within the season in a matter of 3 months, which is what I used to do. However, this time around, within 3 months, you are getting 5 videos covering season 3 of the Vampire Diaries. I just felt like that was what made the most sense within the chapters of the season, and just there's so much to talk about. I also don't want to feel stuck to a certain format, because when we get to season 7, I will be just doing 1 video per season, you know? So the more I have to say, the more videos the season's going to get, and I think season 3 is going to have the most. So I will give you a brief sort of approximation of the release schedule for those 5 videos. So first of all, we have chapter 1 covering episodes 1 to 5, which is self-titled The Hybrid and the Ripper. That is the video you're watching now. Hello, welcome. Then a week from now, another video will come out, chapter 2 covering episodes 6 to 9, self-titled Those Haunted and Those Hunted. And the reason I wanted to get these 2 videos up really close together is because the end of part 2 is the mid-season finale, so it makes sense to kind of get these 2 parts out close together. There'll be a bit more of a gap, and then we have part 3, which covers episodes 10 to 13, self-titled Revenge, Repercussions, and Reunions. A week after that one will be part 4 covering episodes 14 to 17, titled Mother, Murder, and Mystery. And then a bit of time after that we'll get the final part, part 5, covering episodes 18 to 22, titled Bloodlines. I'm so excited, you guys. I know there's been a gap between season 2 and 3. There was a gap between season 1 and 2 as well. I just need time to recharge, personal stuff, make other videos, but I have been working on season 3 as soon as I finished season 2. I've been scripting and trying to figure out how I want to tell this story, because there's just so much to tell, you know? And before we really do get into it, you know, the reason I started this series back in the beginning of 2023 is because I was inspired by YouTube legends Jenny Nicholson and Mike's Mike, so full creds to them. And The Vampire Diaries is my favorite show. I've been watching it since it first started airing in 2009, all the way until it completed in 2017, and I rewatch it every year. So I thought, with my YouTube channel where I talk about film and TV, why not cover my favorite series of all time? So I have been known to cry in a Vampire Diaries deep dive and recap before, so just be aware. There's a lot of emotions that come forth from my entity when it comes to the show, because the show is everything to me. And I wanted to thank you guys so much for supporting the series thus far. It's what's made it possible for me to keep doing this. You guys supporting the videos, liking them, commenting, sharing, subscribing, as well as the brands that choose to sponsor these videos, and those of you who follow me on Patreon. Over my Patreon, I actually have a companion Vampire Diaries series where I watch scenes with you guys and discuss what goes on in the scenes with regards to certain characters and storylines. I actually posted 5 scene/storyline breakdowns on the Vampire Diaries on my Patreon for season 2. So if you ever want any more Vampire Diaries content, Patreon is where it's at. But without further ado, let's get into this YouTube video, my recap and deep dive into season 3 of the Vampire Diaries, part 1 of 5. So first off, let's talk about this mind map situation, okay? Because with each season, the mind map gets bigger and bigger. I'm really hoping I'm not going to run out of wall space soon, but I think we're good. And there have been a couple more developments with the mind map. Obviously, you guys know that the bigger the picture, the bigger the character is in the story. When it comes to my strings, I did get a bit of criticism that my strings that I was using before were not pigmented enough and you couldn't tell the difference between the colors, which is totally fair. So I bought new strings that are a lot brighter. We still have our blue strings, which indicate genetic familial relationship. We have our red strings, which still indicate romantic relationships, past, present, and future. However, I've made that a little bit more obvious. So if the relationship is in the past, you know, they've broken up, they're not together anymore, etc., etc., we have got a gap between the lines to indicate a breakup. Makes sense, right? And then if the relationship is present, it's currently still active, the line connects fully between the two characters. And then if there is a line pointing from one character to another, but it's not fully connecting, that means the relationship relationship is like a crush. It's happening. It's in the progress of becoming a fang. And then finally, we have a new color on the board, the green one, which indicates bloodlines with regards to vampirism. So if a certain vampire has turned a certain human into a vampire, that is why they will have a green line there. This isn't too important just yet, but it comes quite important later on in the season. There are actually a lot more symbols here in season 3, so I've put a key over here for you to refer back to if you can't remember what symbol means what. This is how we keep track of what kind of supernatural creature a character is, as well as, you know, what their status is. These symbols will finally reveal where they come from this season, so that's quite exciting. So of course, we still have our witch, our vampire, and our werewolf, and then we have our doppelganger symbol for Elena and Catherine. Our new symbol is the ghost symbol. We'll get into that. And then of course our hybrid symbol, which so far is just reserved for Mr. Niklaus. We also have a new symbol for the original, so we can tell who are original vampires. We've got a symbol for the town council now, so that's any human in this town that is usually a founding family who is trying to secretly protect the town from vampires. They don't do a very good job of it, but they're there. We have the X's, obviously, for characters that have died, and then we have the question mark for characters that are yet to be introduced to the plot. As you can see, there's quite a few of them, so always exciting to unveil a new character. But yeah, that's pretty much everything with the mind map. So now that we've covered that, I think we will do a little summary as to what happened in season 1 and season 2, so we're all caught up to date, so we can dive on in to season 3.
You're back.
Did you doubt me?
Not for a second.
Not a replacement for my videos, of course. Go do the required reading first. So starting with season 1, obviously this season is all about the setup. Our story takes place in the fictional town of Mystic Falls in the real state of Virginia in the United States in 2009. It is a couple months after Elena, our main character, and her younger brother Jeremy lost their parents to a car accident. They are now being taken care of by their aunt Jenna. And the story starts on Elena's first day of her junior year of high school. She's trying to get back into the swing of things after a crazy summer with the loss of her parents. She broke up with her boyfriend Matt Donovan, who's still salty about it, and Matt Donovan's older sister Vicky is really into drugs, and she's messing around with Elena's younger brother Jeremy, so he's getting involved with the wrong crowd. On the first day at school, Elena bumps into Stefan Salvatore, who she quickly develops a romance with, but she doesn't know his secret, and we learn his secret through his interactions with his older brother Damon, who has come back to town to torment Stefan because of something that happened in their past. And these two characters are both vampires who've been alive since the 1800s. We get a lot of flashbacks in the show setting up the history of the town when it was founded by the founders in 1864. In those flashbacks, we learned about a character named Catherine Pierce, who looks identical to Elena because she is her doppelganger. And we see in the past that before Stefan and Damon were turned into vampires, they had a love triangle romance with Catherine, and Catherine had a lot of secret agendas going on in the town of Mystic Falls at the time. She turned a bunch of people into vampires, then orchestrated all of their death to fake her own. But it turned out Damon had his own secret plan with Catherine's handmaiden slash witch, Emily Bennett. And Emily Bennett created a tomb to protect all of the vampires so they wouldn't perish in this church fire. So there is a tomb under the town that Damon was trying to open to get Catherine out because he thought that's where she was. He then enlisted the help of Elena's best friend Bonnie and her Grams, because did I mention that Elena's best friend Bonnie is a witch? And they tried to help him open the tomb. In the process, Sheila Bennett, Bonnie's Grams, died, so Bonnie has beef with Damon. He also tried to kill her once when she came in between him trying to get the tomb open. And this all led to Damon discovering that his long lost love Catherine was not even in this tomb. Elena also at this point had discovered that Stefan was a vampire, so she was going through all of that. Then she had another revelation that Stefan's ex-girlfriend Catherine, that they had all been mentioning, looks identical to her. And Stefan didn't know why they looked identical. He couldn't explain it because Catherine never had a child that he knew of. But then he looked into Elena's birth records and discovered that Elena is not actually Grayson Gilbert and Miranda Gilbert's daughter. She is in fact adopted. And her aunt Jenna knew about this, and she ends up trying to help her find her birth mother. Her birth mother turns out to be Isabel Fleming, who is a vampire that Damon actually turned, so a lot of complications there. And Elena's real father is someone who she thought was her uncle, John Gilbert. So technically Jeremy is her cousin, but they still associate as brother and sister. So quite a messy family tree. Elena's history teacher, Alark Saltzman, who is a vampire hunter who came to Mystic Falls to figure out how his wife died. He thought Damon killed his wife, so he tried to kill him. So he was actually married to Elena's birth mother before he met her, and he was dating Elena's aunt Jenna. So that's how he fits into the story. Back in this family tree over here, as I mentioned, Jeremy dated Vicky Donovan, who is Matt's older sister, and Matt dated Elena. But Vicky Donovan got turned into a vampire by Damon because he was being all reckless. And then she had to be killed by Stefan because she tried to kill Jeremy and Elena. And Elena made Damon compel Jeremy to forget about Vicky's death. So compulsion is a trick that vampires have where they can like alter your mind, make you forget stuff, make you do stuff against your will. After the death of Vicky, Jeremy then gets into a relationship with this girl named Anna. Turns out Anna is a vampire whose mother is trapped in the tomb that Damon thought Catherine was trapped in. So she was using Jeremy to try and get the tomb open. But then after they worked through that, turns out she actually had feelings for him and they developed a relationship. But by the end of the season, there was another vampire roundup very similar to the one in 1864, because Elena's father, John Gilbert, is part of a secret town council where the founding families come together to try and rid the town of vampires. And at this point, when Damon had gotten Bonnie and her Grams to open the tomb to find Catherine, all the tomb vampires had gotten out and were wreaking havoc on the town, including trying to get revenge on the Salvatore brothers for getting them locked up in the tomb in the first place. They kidnapped Stefan and tortured him, and then Stefan had a blood relapse because he is a vegetarian vampire, if you will, and only feeds on animals. So this is where we learned that he has an issue with feeding on human blood. So by the end of the season 1 finale, Elena's birth father, John Gilbert, and Mayor Lockwood, who is the father of our character Tyler, got together to devise this plan to use this supernatural device, which would make the vampires all have this brain issue that would make them keel over in pain. They'd inject them with vervain, they round them up, and they put them in the basement of a building and burn them all alive so they all die. But during this process, Mayor Lockwood and Tyler Lockwood both had a reaction to this. So Mayor Lockwood was rounded up with the rest of the vampires and he died in the fire. Tyler Lockwood was driving a car at the time with Caroline and Matt. He got in a car accident to which Caroline ended up being hospitalized and almost died. But Damon used his vampire blood to heal her. But then Caroline was killed by Catherine, because at this point Catherine had come back to town pretending to be Elena and she had a secret agenda and for some reason killed Caroline, ergo turning her into a vampire. She then also got involved with Tyler Lockwood's uncle Mason Lockwood and was using him to find a artifact called a moonstone. At that point, Mason Lockwood got killed by Damon, and then Catherine orchestrated Tyler Lockwood to trigger his werewolf curse, because we learn about werewolves in season 2. So the way a werewolf triggers their curse is, first of all, it has to be in their bloodline, and if they take a human life, they trigger the curse and are forced to turn into a wolf every full moon. So at this point, Tyler's a werewolf, Caroline's a vampire. They're both helping each other out with that, and in this process developing a friendship, because Caroline's relationship with Matt Donovan is starting to get strained because she's dating him at this point, and he can tell she's keeping a secret from him, but he doesn't know what. Eventually he figures it out and says he can't handle her being a vampire, so they break up. After Jeremy lost his 2 vampire girlfriends in season 1, in season 2 he ends up developing a romance with Elena's best friend Bonnie. So that's kind of what's going on there. But our main plot for season 2, after Catherine comes to town and has this like weird monster plan that no one understands, she ends up getting locked in a tomb. Elena ends up getting kidnapped by some vampires who want to trade her over to these people called the Originals. Elena doesn't know why, and prior to this there'd been this discussion about the sun and the moon curse. Turns out that this curse was actually fake. It was created by this original vampire named Klaus Michelson, because he is actually a hybrid. He's part of the original family, and we learn a lot through Elijah Michelson, who is his brother, who has a vendetta out against him because he thinks that Klaus had daggered all of his family, which means like they're temporarily dead, and put them in coffins and thrown them out at sea. So he was trying to help our gang kill Klaus, but Klaus was coming after Elena because he wanted to break his hybrid curse, because his parents way back in the day, they're like 1,000 years old, turned them into vampires. But when he made his first human kill, it triggered the werewolf curse, because what his parents didn't realize is that his mother had had an affair with a wolf, so he was part wolf, and then he got turned into a vampire, so he's a hybrid. But a witch put a curse on Klaus that kept his werewolf side dormant, and in order to become a full hybrid he had to break the curse. But in order to break the curse, he had to do a ritual that involved destroying the moonstone, which was an artifact used to recreate this curse that Catherine was after, that he ended up getting his hands on. He also had to sacrifice a vampire and a werewolf. The werewolf that he ended up sacrificing was a character who's not even on here anymore, Jules, and the vampire that he ended up sacrificing was Elena's Aunt Jenna. So originally he was going to use Caroline and Tyler in the plan, but then Damon messed with his plan, so he ended up having a backup werewolf and a backup vampire. But if you're wondering how Elena fits into this whole situation, remember how I mentioned Elena is a doppelganger like Catherine? So the reason that Catherine came to town to try and get all this stuff orchestrated was because she wanted to hand it over to Klaus so he could break the curse and give her her freedom, because Catherine has been running from Klaus for 500 years, back when he first tried to break the curse and she fled, because doppelganger blood was used to create the curse on Klaus in the first place. So in order to break it, part of it is that he needed to sacrifice the doppelganger. Catherine screwed with his plans, and that's why she's been running, and why she orchestrated her death with the tomb vampires, and why she was trying to get everything to hand over to Klaus. But Elena is willing to do this because she doesn't want to let any of her family die because of her, because way back when Catherine screwed over Klaus, he ended up murdering her entire family and village. So lo and behold, Klaus gets a hold of Elena. He does end up killing her in this sacrifice, this curse, so she does die. But what Klaus doesn't know is Elena's father, John, has gotten Bonnie to perform a spell where his life force will be transferred over to Elena. So basically he will die so that she can live. So she does end up surviving. Okay, another really important detail I missed out is Bonnie in season 2 had gotten access to an abandoned house where a massive witch massacre happened, so she was getting a lot of her power from these spirits. And she had some altercation with Klaus that made him think that she was dead, so that she was their secret weapon. So when Klaus was mid-transition into a werewolf, his first time turning into one, he was vulnerable. So that's when Bonnie came in and was going to slow down Klaus's transition, keep him vulnerable so that Elijah could show up and kill him. And he did show up, but then Klaus stopped him and said that he didn't bury their family at sea. He can bring him to their bodies. He can reunite them. So Elijah ends up turning on the gang, even though they had this whole like deal together. So at this point, their plan has completely failed. And a little bit earlier than that, when Damon had screwed with Klaus's plan by saving Caroline and Tyler, during that altercation, Tyler was transitioning into a wolf and he didn't have time to lock himself up, and he ends up biting Damon. And werewolf bites are toxic to vampires. At the end of this whole ritual situation, the funeral for all the people that have died, Damon reveals to Stefan that he is bitten by Tyler Lockwood, so he is going to die from a werewolf bite. Stefan then gets Bonnie to talk to the witch spirits to ask if there is a way that they can help save Damon's life, and all she hears from the witch spirits is a name, Klaus. So then Stefan goes over to Klaus to ask him what the cure is to save Damon from a werewolf bite. Turns out that the cure for a werewolf bite for a vampire is only Klaus's blood, because nature likes the balance. Klaus is part werewolf, part vampire, so his blood will heal Damon, but he says the only way he will give it to Stefan is if Stefan becomes his wingman, essentially, and goes on a decade-long bender with him. Stefan does it. He agrees to leave town with Klaus and do his dirty work, be his sidekick, and it's implied that Klaus has plans for Stefan. He's heard about him. He's the Ripper, all that kind of stuff, so he feels like he'll be useful to him if he starts drinking human blood again. So in the finale, he forces him to. Elena is with Damon, trying to give him hope and being there for him essentially on his deathbed. And while this is happening, Catherine shows up with the cure because Klaus told her to take it to him. But what Klaus didn't know, well, he says he did know, but he didn't care, is that Damon had been giving Catherine vervain so she could avoid compulsion, and she ended up escaping because she found the loophole, because vervain is toxic to vampires, but also it prevents humans from being compelled by vampires and vampires from being compelled by original vampires, because original vampires can compel other vampires. So she was drinking vervain. So she found a way out of this loophole, escaped Klaus's kidnapping, gave Damon the cure, and this was after Elena had given Damon a goodbye kiss, so it's a bit of an awkward sitch. She told Elena that Stefan gave it all up to save his brother, even her, so he's left town. During all this, Damon was hallucinating because of the werewolf bite. It has a lot of side effects, and he was trying to get tracked down by the town council. Liz Forbes tried to shoot him, but he ran out of the way and the bullet ended up going into Jeremy. Bonnie then took him to the witch spirit house and asked the spirits to save his life. They warned her that there would be consequences, but she begged them because she loves him, so they did bring him back to life. We're all caught up there. But at the end of the episode, the end of season 2 finale, Jeremy hears noises in the house and he goes downstairs and he sees the ghosts of his 2 ex-girlfriends, Vicky and Anna. Oh my god. I really hope that I got that all correct, because my mouth is as dry as the Sahara and I'm sweating up a storm, but goddamn. Alrighty guys, so that is my summary for season 1 and season 2 of The Vampire Diaries. It's such a great show. If you ever want to watch The Vampire Diaries, rewatch it, or any other show that is not on a streaming service in your country, I'm gonna hook you up real quick with the sponsor of today's video before we get into the premiere of season 3. So Surfshark VPN is a virtual private network that keeps everything you do online safe and private. It does this by masking your activities so that when your devices are connected to the internet, your location and all of your information is encrypted. Picture it sort of like the hackers or like the vampires in season 1 in The Tomb, and they can't get past that barrier. This is really essential to keep your personal data secure, not only on your home Wi-Fi, but especially when you're using public Wi-Fi when you're traveling, at work, at school, or at a cafe even. On top of the practicality of it, a really great bonus of Surfshark VPN is that it actually unlocks websites, content, and online shopping deals that you might not normally have access to based on your country. With Surfshark VPN, with a click of a button, you can travel virtually to anywhere in the world and not be limited to what's only available in your country. You know how when a character becomes a vampire, all of their emotions are heightened? Well, this is like with Surfshark VPN, all of your streaming services get heightened. Speaking of streaming services, we all know that what's available to you differs from country to country, and if you are in the US and you can't watch The Vampire Diaries because it's not on the Netflix over there, it is here in Australia, so click a button and virtually come visit me and you can watch The Vampire Diaries on Netflix. And like the founding family's privilege in Mystic Falls, all of your family can gain access to Surfshark VPN on one account on an unlimited amount of devices. And unlike Bonnie having to deal with the risk of the spirit witches, there's no risk to you signing up for Surfshark VPN because they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you sign up using the link in my description and use code Luke Alexander at checkout, you can gain 3 months free of a Surfshark VPN premium membership. I've been a happy customer of Surfshark VPN, and if you want to join me in keeping your data and personal information secure and unlocking a much wider range of content, then click the link in the description. Thank you so much, Surfshark VPN, for sponsoring this video, and without further ado, let's get into it. Season 3, episode 1, titled The Birthday. So our episode begins during summer in Tennessee. A woman comes out of her house looking for her dog Rudy when Klaus shows up, speaking in his fake American accent, saying that his car broke down miles back and her house is the first one that he's seen, and he just wants to use her phone because his is dead. And the woman goes to get the phone and he asks if she's not going to invite him in, and she says, no, I'll grab the phone and bring it out to you. And he gets pissed like, damn, where's that southern hospitality? Then we go inside the house where the woman's roommate is. She's just chit-chatting, and then she sees her roommate show up being held by Klaus and she's crying, and Klaus is asking where he can find Ray Sutton, he's been told that he lives there. And the woman says he's almost always on the road, to which Klaus says, well, I'm sure he'll be back in time for the full moon. The woman clocks what Klaus means, and she tries to run. But then when she gets to the front door, Stefan is standing there ominously in her way. Klaus asks her again, and the woman gives in and tells Klaus the regular bar that Ray hangs around in. And he's like, great, now invite my friend in. She invites Stefan in, and Klaus tells Stefan to make the first girl die quickly, but the second one suffer since she didn't cooperate. He then walks out to go wait in the car, and he smirks as he hears the woman begging for their lives and then screaming. Ergo, Stefan's gone rogue, Stefan's gone bad, and Klaus is loving every second of it. The next day back in Mystic Falls, we are in Elena's bedroom where she is waking up, looking very defeated. She goes to wake Jeremy up saying that he's late for work, and Matt just called, so he obviously works at the grill now. So then Elena gets a call from Caroline, who's in the town square shopping for her birthday party, to which she thinks Elena's gonna bail on, and she's like, well, he didn't want it in the first place. And Caroline's like, well, yes, so that's why I'm throwing it in the first place. She then tells Elena to call her mom, Sheriff Liz Forbes, because she has some updates about 3 more animal attacks that were cited in Memphis, Tennessee. She tells Elena not to get her hopes up, but Elena is grasping for straws, trying to find any sightings of where Stefan could be, because remember in the show, animal attacks are used to cover up vampire attacks, which makes me wonder, are there like town councils in every state or city? Elena then goes downstairs where Rick is cleaning up the couch that he was sleeping on, and she tells him that he's been sleeping on that couch all summer. If he wants a room, he can have one. And he's like, and sleep in my dead girlfriend's room or your dead parents' room? I think not. And then she updates him on what she heard from Caroline. Elena's very frazzled, but Rick wishes her happy birthday, and she's like, thanks. It's very Bella Swan New Moon coded about not enjoying her birthday. So over at the Salvatore house, Damon is in his bathtub drinking some champagne, where his compelled human girlfriend Andy is getting ready, and he asks her to bring him a towel, and she's like, can't you get it yourself? I'm not your slave. Which, thank you. Stand up for yourself, Andy. So he gets out of the bathtub, dripping, soaking wet. Then Elena shows up at the front door wondering where Damon is, and she turns around to see that he is standing there naked. She covers her eyes, probably tempted to take a peek, and she's like, oh my god, you knew that I was here. So she throws a blanket at him. He covers himself up. Elena then tells Damon about the animal attack sightings in Memphis, Tennessee. He thinks it's gonna be another dead end, like all the ones they've had for the past 2 months while trying to find Stefan, and she's like, fine, I'll just go myself. He vamp speeds up to her and tells her, no, you won't, because Klaus thinks you're dead, and that's the way we need to keep it. She asks him again, pleading, saying it's a new lead, and it's been a while since they've had one, and he says fine, he'll check it out himself then. Elena then leaves and Damon goes to his room. He opens his closet where he is clearly tracking Stefan and Klaus's whereabouts on his own, but doesn't want Elena to know about it because he doesn't want her to get her hopes up, which is really sweet. Andy goes up to him and he asks her if she can get the address of the Tennessee animal attack, because she's a newcaster, she's gonna get him that info. So Jeremy's in the back room of the grill, slacking on the job, which he clearly doesn't care about if he slept in, and he is FaceTiming Bonnie, who's visiting her dad's side of the family for the summer, so she's actually not in the first 3 episodes, which sucks. She's complaining about her family, and he's complaining about his summer job, and then the lights start flickering in and out, and he hears something, and it tells Bonnie he's got to go to work. Bonnie tries to check if he's okay, and he's acting weird, but he says he is, so he hangs up, but then the lights go out again, and then Vicky shows up, and then disappears. Jeremy goes to pick up his phone, and then we see Anna is standing behind him, so he's getting haunted by his ex-girlfriends. Matt then blows through the door and asks Jeremy if he can swap sections with him because he doesn't want to wait on Tyler and Caroline, and he asks why, and he's like, because I don't want to serve my ex-girlfriend and her new boyfriend. So Jeremy goes to serve Caroline and Tyler, and she asks him if Matt asked to change sections with him, and he's like, yeah, and she tells Tyler that Matt thinks that they're dating, and he says so does his mother, and she's like, oh, what? That's ridiculous. And he's like, well, we spend so much time together, it's not that big of a leap. And she's like, oh my god. And Jeremy's like, okay, and he leaves. So clearly these two like each other, but they just aren't admitting it. So back in Memphis, Tennessee, at a bar called Southern Comfort, Mr. Ray, oh my god, first character reveal, Ray is trying to get a drink when he gets interrupted by Klaus, who says he's been looking for him everywhere. First in Florida, where he learned he moved to Memphis, then to the 2 women that led him here. Ray naturally is creeped out by this and tries to leave, but Klaus stops him and says that his type is very hard to come by. He tries to leave again, but then Stefan shows up, and Klaus tells him that Stefan's compelled everyone in the bar, so if he's thinking of getting help from them, he better think again. And Ray's like, damn, vampires. Klaus was like, no, actually, I'm a special kind of monster. I got some vampire in me, I got some werewolf in him. And Ray is like, ugh, what do you mean? And Klaus was like, well, I'm a hybrid, and I want to make more of me. And Ray, you're the first werewolf I've come across, and I would like you to lead me to your pack. Ray says that he can't compel him, because a vampire can't compel a werewolf. But then Klaus shoots Stefan a look, who orders a drink and tells Ray that they're going to play a game. It's called Truth or Wolfsbane, which is a herb similar to vervain, which is toxic to vampires. Wolfsbane is toxic to wolves. So Damon is driven with Rick to Memphis, Tennessee. Then they go to the house, and Damon notices that he can get in, where, you know, vampires normally have to be invited in. So he's like, okay, looks like everyone's dead. And this is confirmed when they see blood sprayed all over the floors and walls, and they walk into the living room, where they see the 2 women sitting on the couch looking very under the weather. Damon says he can tell this is Stefan's work. Rick asks how he can tell, Damon kicks the lady's leg and their heads fall off of their bodies. Damon says that Stefan is a ripper. He feeds so hard that he blacks out, rips the bodies to pieces, and then he feels remorse and tries to put them back together again. It's the damnedest thing. Damon then starts pouring gasoline on the woman's body because even though Stefan and Klaus don't care about keeping the vampire secret under wraps, he still does. While he's doing this, he notices a creaking beneath the floor. He lifts up the rug and there's a trap door to the basement, and they deduce that a werewolf must live here because it looks like the type of place that a werewolf would lock themselves up on the full moon. But after that, they light the woman's body and the house on fire and leave. So over at the Salvatore house, Caroline is setting up for Elena's party with Elena and Tyler, and Elena's complaining about how she has to fight with Damon every time they get a new lead on Stefan, and Tyler suggests that maybe he doesn't want to find Stefan because he's into Elena. And Caroline's annoyed that Tyler said that, but Elena reminds him that the only reason that Stefan's even in this mess is because he saved Damon's life. Tyler goes on being a dumb man and says, well, you kissed Damon, Elena. Probably screwed with his head. Caroline calls out Tyler again and apologizes to Elena for telling him, but Elena says she only kissed Damon because she thought that he was dying. It was just a goodbye kiss. Elena then notices that she got a missed call from Bonnie, so she leaves the room to call her back, and Caroline goes off at Tyler for saying that she can tell him stuff, but he's not supposed to say what he shouldn't know, and he's like, whatever, I gotta go leave for this party and pick up my date. And Caroline asks who it is, and he says Sophie, and she's like, oh, you're taking slutty Sophie? And he's like, what? It's been slow in that department lately, and I'm like horny all the time. And Caroline's like, tell me about it. Sometimes I feel like I'm gonna explode. He gives her a look, and she's like, it's a vampire thing. Emotions are heightened, and he says, yeah, it's a werewolf thing too. I just can't seem to turn it off. They both stare at each other, the sexual tension is brewing, and then she's like, okay, well, I hope you get lucky tonight, and he just laughs and leaves. So back at the Southern Comfort in Tennessee, Stefan is torturing Ray to get some answers from him. He has him pinned up against a dartboard, throwing them at him when he doesn't give him a clear answer as to where his pack is. Then a woman goes over to Klaus and says that she saw that guy's brother Damon with his friend at the farmhouse. Klaus thanks the woman and tells her and the neighborhood watch to keep an eye out. Stefan then asks him if Damon is still on their trail, and Klaus says he's getting closer, so he's gonna have to do something about that. And Stefan stops him and asks if he can handle it. Klaus doesn't want to let Stefan leave, but Stefan says that Klaus knows he'll come back. He's at his service for saving his brother. He just wants to make sure that he doesn't bother them anymore. So it's nighttime now at the Salvatore house, and Elena is in Stefan's room. She's finished getting ready for the party when Damon shows up, and she makes a joke telling him that she promises she'll only cry after the cake, and he's like, hey, it's your birthday. You can cry if you want to. He then goes on looking around Stefan's room. He looks at a picture of Stefan with Elena, and he jokes that Stefan is such a pack rat because he like hoards onto so many things, and he has brought Elena a gift, and this gift is Elena's necklace. So Elena is really having an emotional moment here because this is the necklace that Stefan gave to her, you know, all the way back in the beginning of season 1. It means a lot to her, and she thought she lost it during the whole ritual situation with Klaus. Damon actually found the necklace and kept it to give to her as a gift on her birthday. So it's really sweet because he puts it on her neck, and this necklace, even though he has a crush on Elena, is a symbol of Elena's love with Stefan. So it's really generous and sweet and selfless of him to give it to her. So I really like that moment. So then Damon escorts Elena down to the party, and they're walking through the halls of all these teens, drinking, wishing Elena happy birthday. And then Caroline shows up to Elena, who's a bit shocked as to how many people are there, and she's like, come on, just have a drink, have fun. So over in the Salvatore library, which is kind of like the stoner den, Matt goes up to Jeremy to smoke a joint with him, and he asks what's going on. And Jeremy shares that ever since he died, when Bronnie brought him back to life, he's been seeing really weird things, but he's being really vague about it. And Matt asks what Bonnie thinks of it, and Jeremy says he hasn't told her or anyone what's been going on. So then Elena and Caroline show up to the library, the stoner pit. Matt walks up to them and gives Elena a happy birthday kiss on the cheek, but ignores Caroline and walks past. And Caroline's like to Elena, oh great, his hatred for me has driven him to drugs. And Elena laughs, but then she notices Jeremy sitting over there smoking a joint, which we know for Jeremy is his gateway, back when he had his drug problem in season 1. So outside, Rick is talking to Damon and having a bit of an existential crisis about him being a teacher getting drunk with his high school students, as he should, because that's weird. But Damon says he loves high school parties, which is not only weird considering he's centuries years old, but because he was turned at age 25, and that is the age he is presenting. Rick then asks where Andy is, and Damon says that she's finishing up at work. Then Elena shows up and asks Rick if he can talk to Jeremy because he's smoking again, and maybe Rick can get through to him because he looks up to him. So Rick's kind of like their guardian at the moment. Ever since Jenna died, he's been like taking care of them and stuff. So we go over to Andy, who's finishing up at the news studio, and she's the only one there, and the lights go out. She starts hearing whooshing and stuff, and then all of a sudden a spotlight shines on her and she can't really see anything, but then she sees a silhouette walking towards her, and it's Stefan, and she's like, oh my god, Stefan? Where have you been? We've been looking for you. And then all of a sudden his eyes start going all veiny and the fangs pop out, so looks like he's about to cause some damage. So back at the party, Caroline is drinking while watching Tyler dance with Slutty Sophie. Her words, not mine. Then Matt shows up to Caroline and is like, hey, and she's like, oh, I thought you were ignoring me. And he's like, no, I haven't been. And she's like, really? Because that's one of the 3 words you've said to me all summer. And he's like, well, maybe that's because you've been with Tyler every day of the summer. So obviously Matt is upset about his breakup with Caroline, and now she's starting to date his best friend, even though Matt did break up with Caroline. But you know Matt and his ex-girlfriend situations, it takes him a while to get over it. Matt then changes the subject and asks if Caroline and Tyler shouldn't be mortal enemies considering the whole vampire werewolf thing. And Caroline gets pissed at Matt for bringing that up in the open when anybody could hear them, and Tyler notices their little quabbles, so Matt leaves and Tyler shows up with Sophie, who compliments Caroline's party, and she's like, thanks, and compels her and is like, now leave it. Tyler gets really pissed at Caroline and they leave. Outside, Demi gets a text from Andy asking him to pick her up, as Rick is just continuing to whine about being a middle-aged drunk teacher with a bunch of high school students. So then Elena goes over to Damon's room where she finds Caroline drinking a blood bag, saying she just needed a beat, and Elena says she's just not feeling the party and wants to leave, and Caroline gives her a pep talk like, no, Elena, you have to stay, you can't move on with your life until you blow out the candles and make a wish. And Elena gets really offended by this, asking Caroline, is that what everyone wants her to do? Just move on with her life and forget about Stefan? Caroline says no, of course, but she's just letting her life pass her by, and Stefan was always the one who tried to make sure that she lived it. And Elena's like, fine, you want me to make a birthday wish? I just want to know he's alive, that's all, okay? Then Elena goes to leave, but she notices Damon's closet's cracked open, and she goes in there and sees all of the maps and sightings and strings, and realizes that Damon's been tracking Stefan in class without her. So Damon arrives to the newscaster room to pick up Andy. He then finds Andy's purse on the ground. It's looking a little suspicious. He looks up and Stefan is standing ominously right in front of him. Stefan tells Damon to stop following him, and Damon says he's seen his work in Tennessee. If he keeps that up, there'll be no saving him. And Stefan tells him he doesn't need saving, he just needs him to let him go. And Damon says he's got a birthday girl at home who won't let him do that. So then Stefan calls out to Andy, and Damon looks up and sees that Andy is standing on a high metal beam, freaking out, saying Stefan compelled her not to move. And Damon's like, it's okay, I'll get you down. But then Stefan tells Andy she can move, and he vamp speeds, pins Damon against the wall so he can't save her. And Andy falls off of the beam and hits the ground. Her skull cracks and she dies. Poor Andy. I mean, she really was just collateral damage. But that is our first death for an official character in season 3. There you go. I wonder if it ain't your touch. So back at the Salvatore house, Jeremy goes outside to the parking lot where he finds Matt and asks what he's doing, and he says he can't find his truck. So Jeremy's like, that's probably a sign you shouldn't be driving it, you can catch a lift with me. But when Jeremy gets in the car first, he gets a fright because Vicky, or her ghost, is sitting next to him. He's like, Vicky? And she's like, help me, Jeremy. And then Matt gets in the car, she disappears, and he's like, did you just say my sister's name? Jeremy denies it, but when he turns on the headlights for his car, Anna is standing in front. And then he tells Matt maybe they should just walk. So inside, Caroline is walking through the crowd, and she's like, excuse me, and she just like grabs big buff guy by the throat and like picks him up and moves him. It's really funny. So much of what you said to Matt about keeping the secret. Then Tyler shows up to her and asks her what her problem is. Is she pissed that he brought someone? And she sarcastically says, no, you're dating someone, that's awesome, and you're horny all the time, guys have needs, right? And he's like, look, if I shouldn't be dating anyone, just tell me, because if you don't, I'm gonna keep dating. And she's like, oh no, it's fine. And he's like, don't play that, Caroline, I've already been there once with you and you shut me down, so I'm not going back there until you make it crystal clear. And then she grabs him and gives him a big old fat sloppy drunk kiss to that song that's like, you make me feel so la 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 la. Season 2, season 3, like, I like Tyler and Caroline together, so let's enjoy it while it's good, because it ends up turning to freaking shit. But I really like their romance. I appreciate a lot more to the Matt Caroline drama. Like, I like the build up. Anyway, moving on. Damon gets back to the house into his room where Elena is waiting there holding all of the documents, and she asks why he lied to her all summer and made her feel like an idiot for having hope. And Damon says they're both idiots, and she asks him again, why didn't you tell me that you've been tracking Klaus's victims? And he says, because they're not Klaus's victims, Elena, they're Stefan's. He's left a sea of bodies across the eastern seaboard. Elena's really shocked by this because she doesn't want to believe that Stefan could do something like this because he's always been like a good vampire. But Damon just tells her to stop looking for Stefan and stop waiting for him. The Stefan they know is gone and he's not coming back, at least in her lifetime. He then leaves and Elena just breaks down because he just shat all over her hope. So over at the Gilbert house, Jeremy and Matt are like having a bunch of munchies, eating a bit of ice cream in the kitchen, and Matt says he's got to go leave before Elena shows up. She wouldn't be happy he was getting high with Jeremy, but before he does, he asks Jeremy if he really did say his sister's name Vicky in the car, and Jeremy finally opens up and says that he's been seeing Vicky, and Matt takes a moment with that, but then he's just like, oh, you know, sometimes I think I see her too, it's just because I miss her so much. And Jeremy's like, no, I really see her, and Matt's like, look, we have our hands full with all the supernatural stuff, so really, ghosts? And Jeremy's like, yeah, you're right, my head's probably just all messed up. So back in Memphis Tea at Southern Comfort, Klaus has Ray strapped to a pool table and he's torturing him, and he's like, I've already told told you where the pack meets. What more do you want from me? And then Klaus says that he's got great plans for him, bites into his wrist, force feeds his blood to Ray, and snaps his neck. Then Stefan shows back up, and Klaus says that he knew that he would come back, but he knows he still cares about his old life, despite what he may say, because you never really stop caring about family. But every time he feeds on blood, it'll make it easier for him to let go. So Klaus is really playing this game of trying to get Stefan full into his whole bloodaholic ripper situation so that he can take full control of him. But like, he's playing it the hard way. If he really just wanted to take control of Stefan fully, he would just compel him. But we'll get to that at a certain point. We'll figure out why he's playing these games. So over at the Gilbert house, Rick is looking at a picture frame of him and Jenna, and then Elena shows up and he's packing up his stuff, and she asks what's going on, and he says that he's leaving because he's not a good role model. He drinks too much, says the wrong thing, and encourages bad behavior. Well, we appreciate self-awareness. Well, yes. He says that he needs to be alone and get his life together, and apologizes to Elena and says, you know, you're 18 now. You can do this all alone a lot better without me. And it's just so sad because like, this is her birthday and people are just like hitting her with all these jabs. Like, give her one day. So during the end of the scene into the next one, the song A Drop in the Ocean by Ron Pope starts playing. And to me, this is one of like the top 5 epitome songs of the Vampire Diaries. I love this song so much. And when I first heard it back in the day, I became such a huge fan of Ron Pope. So we get a bit of a montage during this song. The first scene is of Tyler and Caroline having hot supernatural sex in Tyler's room. Then we get a scene of Damon trashing Stefan's room. So he's in a fit of like rage and despair. Then we get Stefan walking into the car park of the bar, heavy breathing, crying. He pulls out his phone. So he's putting on this facade to Klaus, but he's losing himself more and more every day. And I'm sure he misses Elena and Damon, and he just killed an innocent woman who he was always defending in season 2. So he is losing himself. So then in Elena's room, we see that her phone is getting a call from a private number, which we know is Stefan. And I remember the first time I saw this because she like left her room to go to her bathroom. I was like, no, she's gonna miss the call. But luckily she comes back in time and she answers the phone, but the person on the other end doesn't say anything. And she's like, hello, hello. And then she realizes, Stefan, is that you? He doesn't answer, but we see that he's like trying so hard to hold in his tears. And she's like, Stefan, if this is you, you'll be okay. And I love you. Hold on to that, Stefan, and don't let it go. I'm not crying, you are. I'm not crying, you are. I'm not. Anyway, so the next morning after that soul-crushing scene, Caroline is getting dressed in Tyler's room. She's doing the walk of shame. No shame in the game, though. But when she gets downstairs, the lights turn on, and there is Mrs. Lockwood, Tyler's mother, standing there, and she's like, going somewhere? And Caroline's like, oh, I'm sorry, like, oh, I didn't mean to. I'm just gonna go. And she goes to grab her purse on the table, but her purse burns her, so it's obviously been steeped in vervain. And then Carol Lockwood shoots her with a bunch of vervain darts, and she passes out. Boom! Way to not like your son's girlfriend, right? But that is the end of the premiere of season 3. It's a pretty good premiere. It's not my favorite premiere. I still think my favorite premiere is season 2, followed closely by season 5. That had a really good premiere. But yeah, this is where we're at, and I'm excited to get into the next episode, episode 2, The Hybrid. So the episode begins with Damon in his bedroom taking down his map of tracking Stefan and Klaus, and he's listening to the news report about Andy's death. Elena shows up saying that he's been dodging her calls, and she tells Damon that Stefan called her. He didn't actually say anything, but she got Sheriff Forbes to track down the phone call, and it did come from Memphis, Tennessee, so she's pretty confident it's him. Damon is still not interested in finding Stefan, and he lights all of the documents on fire, and Elena leaves because she still has hope. So Rick gets woken up in his apartment by Elena banging on his front door, wanting information about what he knows, but Rick says that he's checked out and he doesn't want any part of this, and besides, he doesn't think it's safe for Elena to get involved because Stefan is off the rails. But Elena says that Stefan's still holding on to his humanity, which means he can still be saved, and she's not the kind of person who can just check out. Ooh, that's shade towards you, Rick. And she continues saying that Stefan would never give up on her, so she's not going to give up on him. So he gives in and tells Elena what he knows about Stefan and Klaus tracking werewolf packs along the eastern seaboard. So over in Tennessee in the Smoky Mountains, Stefan is hiking with Klaus with Ray over his shoulders. Klaus calls out Stefan's brooding, and he says it's because he's tired of hunting down werewolves. And Klaus is like, well, here we are. And we see a bunch of people. They sort of look like campers, but they're actually a pack of werewolves. Ray's pack, to be precise. And when Stefan drops his body on the ground, they all freak out and are like, who are you? And Klaus is like, it should be me you're asking that. And he introduces himself, and they realize, oh, you're the hybrid. And he's like, you've heard of me. Good. So over at the Lockwood mansion, Carol pours herself a glass of dark liquor, and she puts some vervain into the coffee pot. Tyler then comes down and grabs a cup of coffee, and Carol tells him that, you know, if you're gonna have a girl over, you should at least have the decency to not sneak her out like she's a prostitute. And he's like, oh, you heard that? My bad. Tyler then takes a sip of his coffee and notices that it tastes strange. Carol looks nervous, but Tyler's like, oh, I think the cream's bad, and just leaves. So she breathes a sigh of relief and calls someone on her phone saying, I've gotten myself into a bit of a vampire situation. wonder who she's calling. So over at the grill, Jeremy arrives and he goes into the staff room where Matt is getting dressed into his work clothes, and he's wondering why he's there because it's his day off. But he's there because he wants to tell Matt about how he saw Vicky again. And Matt's uncomfortable, like, why don't you talk to your girlfriend about this considering she's a witch? But considering Vicky is Jeremy's ex-girlfriend, that's why he doesn't want to tell Bonnie about it. So Jeremy tells Matt that he did some research and he just needs some personal items of Vicky's and a family member to make contact with her. Matt's really reluctant to do this, but Jeremy's like, Matt, she said she needed help. So Matt changes his tune and is like, what do you need from me? Over at the grill, Elena is asking Tyler some questions about wolves and wolf packs and how she could find one. And Tyler says that although most werewolves like to train themselves up on a full moon, some packs like to roam free and enjoy it out in the wild. And Elena's like, where do they usually do this? He's like, you know, state parks, forests. And she's like, well, do you think there might be anywhere in Memphis, Tennessee? And he looks at the map on her phone and points at a certain point where he's like, this is most likely where they'll be because it's secluded. And that is the Smoky Mountains, where now we know Klaus and Stefan are. Elena thanks Tyler and he's like, no, it's okay, I'm happy to help, as Caroline constantly reminds me Stefan's in this mess because I bit Damon. And then he asks if Elena's heard from Caroline and she hasn't, and he's like, oh, that's weird. So yeah, it is weird. Where is she? Elena then goes up to Rick at the bar and asks if he'd like to take a trip with her to Smoky Mountains, and he's really reluctant because it's a full moon and it's going to be really dangerous. And she's like, well, go before nightfall, and he doesn't want to do it, so she's like, fine, I'll just go by myself. So then he reluctantly agrees to go with her anyway. So back in the mountains, Klaus is talking to the wolf pack about how cool being a hybrid is, and then Ray wakes up from his death slumber. Stefan asks if anyone in the pack there is human, because if Ray does not feed on blood, he will not complete his transition and he will die. No one really speaks out, but then Klaus sniffs out a human and goes to bite his arm. One of the wolves try to stop him, but he holds her back, and then Stefan grabs the human and gives him to Ray to feed off of. Klaus then tells that werewolf woman that this is the new order. You either get with it or you die. And she says she'd rather die than be a vampire. And Klaus is like, wrong choice. Bites his wrist and force feeds her his blood and snaps her neck, and looks to the wolf pack and is like, who's next? So over at the grill, Tyler's playing pool and Matt goes over to him saying that he's been there all day, and he says he's been waiting around for Caroline, but she hasn't showed up yet. And then, you know, it's kind of awkward, and Tyler apologizes for the weird situation Matt's in. You know, they didn't plan to get together, and Matt's like, yeah, it's okay. But he asks where Caroline is though, because it's a full moon and she's usually the one who helps him with that, and he has no idea. Matt then tops up his coffee, he takes a sip, and he's like, oh, what is up with the coffee today? And Matt chuckles and is like, it's vervain. Sheriff makes us put it in the coffee every now and then. Most people don't notice it though. Well, humans at least. So then we cut to the Lockwood mansion, where a man named Bill comes to see Carol Lockwood, and he asks her what's going on, and she tells him that it's about Caroline being a vampire. He asks if anyone in the council knows this. And Carol says no, she's been putting this together on her own for months now, which I would love to know how, but it's hard to grapple with because she's been there since Caroline was born. Remembers when she was a baby, and she starts to break down, but Bill tells her she's a vampire now. We have to do what we have to do. What are they gonna do? I don't remember there being any sign of Carol being suspicious of Caroline being a vampire in season 2. So this little storyline detail kind of came out of nowhere, but whatever. Anyway, so Rick and Elena have arrived to the Smoky Mountains, and they're hiking to get over the ridge where Tyler says that the pack might be. They stop, and Rick has a backpack filled with grenades, because remember, he's a vampire hunter, and he gives Elena some wolfsbane grenades. Elena then tries to give Rick the Gilbert supernatural ring, and he doesn't want it. He's like, no, Elena, I need to make sure you're safe. And she's like, I'm a doppelganger. I'm supernatural. It won't work on me. So this is the Gilbert ring that Elena's father John left for her when he died. There's only 2 of them that exist. Right now, Jeremy has one and John had the other one, but originally Rick had it because he got it from his wife. It's a whole thing. All you need to know is this ring, if a human wears it and they are killed by a supernatural creature, it'll bring them back to life. But because Elena is a doppelganger, it will not work on her. But Rick still doesn't really want it, and Elena's like, fine, just borrow it till we get out of here. I'd be sad if you died before happy hour. Elena then walks over to the edge of the river to look out at the view and is still speaking to Rick like, I don't know why you think you're a lost cause. And just then, Damon Vampspeech shows up and shoves Elena into the water. She goes flying. It's honestly really funny. Elena turns around and asks Damon how he even knew that she was there, looks over at Rick, and she's like, you sold me out? And he's like, did you really think I would let you come into a mountain filled with werewolves without backup? So up above on the ridge, just keeping in mind that now Stefan and Klaus and Damon and Elena and Rick are all in the same forest, okay? They're just higher up. So Stefan and Klaus are up there on the ridge and have tried to transition all of these werewolves into hybrids. So they're all laying there dead, and Ray's the one who's alive, and he's freaking out crying like, oh my god, you killed all my friends. And Klaus is like, that's weird, he transitioned, he should start feeling better soon. And Stefan's like, so is this your plan to build a hybrid army? And Klaus corrects him saying soldiers, and Stefan's like, for what war? And Klaus is like, see Stefan, you arm yourself before war is declared, with an army so big that no one declares to start a fight. These last couple lines are really interesting coming from Klaus, because at this point in the show we've been led to believe that he's this all-powerful villain. Not only is he a part of the original vampire family, he is a hybrid. He is truly immortal. The dagger doesn't even work on him. We've been told that all possible weapons to be used to actually kill an original have been destroyed. So we're left to wonder, who could Klaus really be afraid of? We'll get to that eventually. Very interesting. Anyway, so Stefan asks Klaus if he's gonna have his hybrid soldiers, then why does he need him? And Klaus says, you'll know soon enough, but then gets distracted because Ray starts convulsing and bleeding from his eyes. So back at the river, Damon is trying to get Elena to come out of the water and she refuses. And they argue back and forth, and the gist of it is that Damon wants to keep Elena safe because, you know, Klaus doesn't know that she's alive, but Elena says she's not leaving until she sees Stefan. She just wants to know that he's okay. Damon finally gives in and says fine, they can stay, but they're leaving before the moon sets because he doesn't want to become werewolf bait again, unless she wants to go through that whole deathbed kiss thing again. And she's like, no, it's okay, it's fine, we'll leave then. So back on the ridge, Klaus has fed all of the werewolf human blood. Ray, he runs off and Klaus tells Stefan to go after him, so Stefan does, but then Ray gets into a fight with Stefan and bites him, which we know from Damon and Rose, a werewolf bite is toxic to a vampire, and Ray runs off and Stefan gets distracted because he uses his vampiring to hear Elena, Damon, and Rick, and he looks through some trees and sees them walking up. But then Klaus shows up and he walks away from the clearing, so Klaus doesn't see them, and says that Ray ran off, and Klaus sees his bite, and Stefan's like, yeah, I'm gonna need your blood to heal me, and he says he can get his blood to heal him when he gets Ray back. The stakes are high, guys. We don't need another Salvatore brother possibly dying from a werewolf bite now, do we? So back at the Lockwood house, Tyler gets home and asks Carol why she put vervain in his coffee, and she's like, vervain, what is that? And Tyler's like, let's skip the part where we act like we both don't know that this town is a vampire problem. And he asks why she was testing him to see if he was a vampire, and she's like, well, you've been spending so much time with Caroline, and he's like, what does Caroline have to do with this? And Carol's like, let's skip the part where we both pretend we don't know what she is. And Tyler gets pissed and asks his mother what she did to Caroline, and Carol's like, you can't be with her, Tyler, she's a monster. And Tyler's like, a monster? Really? You don't know what I am, do you? And she's like, what? Back in the Smoky Mountains, the gang is hiking and Damon is getting nervous because the sun is about to set, but Elena reminds him that even though it is, the moon won't reach its apex till well after sunset, so they still have time. But then they hear rustling in the bushes and Rick pulls out his crossbow, and then a disheveled Ray stumbles in front of them. He senses that Damon's a vampire and goes to attack him, but Rick shoots him with his bow. Elena then throws Damon the Wolfsbane grenade bomb, and then it explodes and it knocks Ray out, and they look at him and all realize that he's a hybrid. So over in Matt's garage, Jeremy arrives and they're going through Vicky's personal things to find something that they can use to try and make contact with her, and Matt stumbles on a photo of them together when they were younger, and he's having second thoughts about this whole situation, and Jeremy says that they're doing this so that they can help her, but Matt says he just can't do it and he needs to leave. But while Matt's alone, he turns around to see that the photo frame that was once face down is now faced up. We're getting some paranormal activity up in here. Back in the mountains, Rick and Damon have tied Ray up against a tree, and he wakes up and starts turning into a wolf. So they start to freak out, and Elena says they've got to get out of these mountains. So maybe because he's a hybrid, he's like transitioning earlier because they have choice over when they can transition. So it's fully nightfall now, and Klaus is up on the ridge, and all of his hybrids are suffering the same fate as Ray and acting like zombies charging towards Klaus. Down below, the gang are running through the woods, and Elena trips and falls. But when she goes to get up, Damon tells her not to move, and she slowly looks up to see that there is a wolf inches away from her face. But Damon distracts the wolf like, here, doggy doggy, and runs off, so the wolf chases him. Rick then tells Elena they need to keep going, but she doesn't want to leave Damon behind, and Rick's like, he can take care of himself, Elena, let's go. So back in Mystic Falls, Tyler takes Carol down to the hidden Lockwood cellars, and he wants to show her who really the monster is. So he locks her up in a cage so she can't get out and starts to chain himself up, and she's like, Tyler, what's going on? But then his bones start breaking because he's transforming into a wolf, and she's freaking out, screaming like, Tyler, what's going on? It's a lot. Imagine just like transforming into a wolf in front of your mother. So Damon's in the woods and he's managed to lose that wolf, but then Ray shows up, still in his human form, and he starts fighting Damon, but Damon's no match for him and he almost bites him just when Stefan shows up and rips out Ray's heart. So there is our second death for season 3 of the Vampire Diaries. Poor Ray, he just lost his mind in Klaus's little experiment. Stefan asks Damon why he's still following him, and Damon's like, you should ask your girlfriend, and if you don't want her chasing after you, maybe you should stop with the late night phone calls. And Stefan's like, I didn't call her, and Damon's like, oh sure. He reminds Stefan that Elena's not going to give up on him, and Stefan's like, well, she should because I'm not coming back. Speaking of Elena, her and Rick have made it back to the car, and she is really anxious, freaking out about Damon, but Rick tells her again that Damon can handle himself and he's going to take care of the human. Elena questions this though, given that he says that he's checked out of taking care of people, and he calls out Elena for trying to teach him a lesson like, aren't you a sucker for a lost cause? That's been his thing for the last 2 episodes. I'm a lost cause. And Elena's like, you're not a lost cause, Rick. You're just lost. But then she's like, so am I, and so is Jeremy. Our family is gone, and we don't have anybody, and neither do you, Rick, so we're kind of perfect for each other. They have a moment, and then he looks at her and says, fine, well then I'm keeping the ring. It's really cute. Damon then shows up. Elena checks to see that he's fine, and he's like, I am, and he shoves her back in the car, and up above through the trees, Stefan watches as they drive off. Elena looks out the window and for a moment thinks that she sees Stefan from far away, but when she looks back, he's gone, so she doesn't really know if she saw him. It's like, it's so hard when they're so close yet so far. So Matt then shows up to the Gilbert house to apologize to Jeremy for earlier. Matt's brought some beers, and he's also brought some of Vicky's things, and he has a moment saying that, you know, most people didn't get Vicky or her struggles, but Jeremy really did, even better than he did. Jeremy tells Matt that he doesn't even remember Vicky dying, crying because of how Elena made Damon compel his memories away. So they both bond together about not having a final goodbye with Vicky. But then Vicky's ghost shows up behind Matt, and Jeremy notices and he asks what he sees, and Jeremy says that she's there and asks how he can help her. And Vicky tells Jeremy that she can come back, but she needs his help. But before Jeremy can tell Matt what she says, the lights go out and the glass door shatters, and then Anna shows up and tells Jeremy not to trust Vicky, and then disappears. He's getting whiplash from his ghost exes. So back in the Smoky Mountains at the ridge, Stefan has come back to Klaus with Ray's dead body, and Klaus is looking really defeated, looking at all the dead bodies of the failed hybrids, and says that they all went rabid. Some he had to kill and some just bled out. And his Devo, his hybrids didn't take, so he screams and smashes a beer bottle, and he yells saying that he did everything he was told. He broke the curse. He should be able to turn them. He killed the werewolf. He killed the vampire. He killed the doppelganger. There's a moment of silence where Klaus looks at Stefan, almost like he's about to figure out that Stefan's lying about Elena still being alive, but then he looks over at Stefan's werewolf bite and says that he looks awful, and Stefan's like, well, last time I checked, I was dying and you didn't want to give me the cure. He apologizes to Klaus for taking Ray out and for failing, and tells him that he'll do whatever he needs him to do. So Klaus bites down on his wrist, pours his blood into a beer bottle, and gives it to Stefan to drink to cure his werewolf bite. Stefan drinks it, and Klaus tells him that they're leaving. In an oddly touching moment though, before Klaus leaves, he looks over all the dead hybrids and says, it appears as though you're the only comrade I have left, Stefan. Okay, so clearly Klaus has like some sort of like attachment to Stefan, and at this point, you gotta wonder why. Then another iconic Vampire Diaries song starts playing. Hello, is there anybody out there? So at the Gilbert house, Elena walks into a room where Damon is randomly there, and he says that he was wrong. Stefan was out there. She asks if Stefan's okay, and Damon says he's not, but he can be saved. And after everything that's happened, she asks Damon what made him change his mind, and Damon says even in his darkest place, his brother just can't seem to let him die. So he owes him the same, and he's gonna help Elena get Stefan back. Oh, thank God. But then Damon asks what made Elena change her mind about leaving earlier, and Elena's like, we were getting attacked, there was a werewolf. And Damon's like, you were with the vampire hunter with an immunity ring, you could have kept going. And she's like, it wasn't safe. And he's grilling her, and finally she gives in, and it's like, fine, okay, I didn't want to see you get hurt. And he's like, there it is. And she's like, is that what you want to hear, Damon? That I worry about you, that I care about you? And Damon goes up to her and says, when he brings Stefan back from the edge and back to her, he wants her to remember the feeling she felt while he was gone. So basically what he's saying is, I'll help you get Stefan back, but remember how you feel about me while he's not here. Damon then leaves and walks past Rick, and Rick's walking in with some bags because he's moving in, and he asks Elena if she knows what she's doing there, and she really doesn't. So over in the Lockwood cell, Tyler is human again and is woken up from his transition, and Carol's like crying, and she tells him that she'll take care of it and make sure that nothing happens to Caroline. Well, the next morning, Carol is on the phone with Bill, and he asks her why the sudden change of heart, and she says she's just feeling guilty about the whole thing, and he says not to because they're monsters, and his family's been committed to this fight for almost 150 years, a fight that she married into, so maybe she just doesn't understand. He'll take care of it from here. And before she can continue, he hangs up. So then we see Caroline in some like dungeon or cell, strapped in a chair calling out for someone. The door creaks open, and that man Bill walks in, and Caroline looks at him and is like, Daddy? So yes, guys, Bill, this man who has caught Caroline, locked her up because she's a vampire, she's a monster, is her father that we've heard mention of throughout the show, but we've never actually met before. The father who left Liz because he turned out to be gay. Mr. Bill Forbes. That's why I didn't want to reveal him before, because the cliffhanger is that the man that's locked Caroline up is her father. Anyway, that's the end of episode 2, The Hybrid. It's really fun later on in the show where we get to go to a lot more fun locations, like in season 2 when we had the abandoned house that Rose and Trevor were holed up in, and now in season 3, you know, getting to go to the Tennessee Smoky Mountains, and then in the next 2 episodes, we're going to a fun new city in the US as well. We're really all over the map this chapter. So let's get into episode 3, The End of the Affair. New fit, who dis? My hair is sticking to my lip gloss. Excuse me. Anyway, so this episode begins in the Salvatore house when Damon gets a call from an unknown number, and it turns out to be Catherine, who we haven't seen since the season 2 finale when she escaped from Klaus. So interesting to see what she's been up to. So she's at a payphone. I'm at a payphone trying to asking what's going on back home and if Damon's given up on finding Stefan yet. Damon says he didn't give up on Stefan, he just doesn't know where he is anymore. Catherine's then all like, and Damon's like, but you do know where he is. And he's like, are you trailing Klaus and Stefan? And she's like, a hybrid who wants me dead and his sidekick who's off the rails? I couldn't be further away. And Damon's all, well, that means you know exactly where they are. And she's like, all I know is that Klaus threw a fit when his hybrids didn't work, so now he's looking for answers. Damon asks again where they are, and Catherine's just like, bye, Damon, and hangs up the phone. So she's teasing him. You know Catherine, she always loves to tease. So then we cut to Klaus and Stefan coming out of an SUV, and Stefan's asking where they are. Klaus is like, welcome back to Chicago, Stefan. I know how much you love it here from the good old Ripper days. Stefan says he blacked out for most of it and barely remembers it, so Klaus is like, well, we're just gonna have to jog your memory, aren't we? He then narrates as we cut to a flashback from Chicago in the 1920s. So obviously during Prohibition, alcohol was illegal and there was a lot of underground bars and clubs where people were selling alcohol illegally. And Klaus's narration says that word got around that the Ripper of Monterey got lonely, because remember, Stefan's called the Ripper of Monterey because back in his heyday, he ripped through an entire village in Monterey. He says that the Ripper escaped to the city, and we see Stefan sitting in an old car, feeding on a woman, unabashedly not caring about who's around. Stefan then goes into the jazz bar and says hi to the singer Gloria. He's about to grab a drink from the waiter, but a gorgeous blonde woman in a flapper dress grabs it before he can, and he's like, "Excuse me, ma'am." And she turns around and tells him to be careful, leans in for a kiss, but stops and says, "You're still wearing your date." So he's still got some of that woman's blood on him that he was feeding on, and she licks it up and says, "She's lovely." So she's a vampire too. Stefan is enthralled with this mystery vampire woman. So then after the flashback back in present day, Stefan asks Klaus why he's still with them when they've had their fun and his hybrids have failed, and Klaus says because they're gonna go see his favorite witch. So it's morning time in Mystic Falls in the Gilbert house, and Elena wakes up with Damon laying next to her in bed. She freaks out because he's making a really bad habit of just showing up in her room unannounced, and he's like, "Oh, okay, I guess you don't want me to come bring Stefan back home." And she gets all excited, asking if he knows where Stefan is. He's very vague on the details and isn't really sharing it with her, and then just starts going through her underwear drawer instead, which he does quite often actually. So Caroline wakes up in that dungeon, still chained to the chair. She's trying to break free, but she's too weak from the vervain she's been injected with and her lack of feeding. And then a mist starts pouring in from the vents, and it's making her cough and sick, so it's laced with vervain. Her dad, Bill Forbes, comes in and then says he's so sorry about what happened to her, but he needs answers. And he asks the town council's tales as old question since the beginning of season 1 in the history of time: how do vampires walk in the sun? Caroline pleads to her dad to let her go, and he's like, "Honey, that's all I want to know, then we can just get on with it." She's like, "Really, that's all?" And then she gestures to her daylight ring on her finger, and he looks at it and he's like, "Interesting," and he grabs it off and throws it off her hand. She's like, "No," realizing that she fell for his trap, probably because she believed her own father. He then goes on a little story about Forbes' history and tells Caroline that their ancestors built this place. People thought it was for unruly prisoners, but it was designed for vampire prisoners. Vervain in the ventilation system, reinforced steel chairs, and shutters in the ceiling. Caroline asks what he's doing, and he holds a blood bag to her face. Her eyes go red and veiny at the thirst for blood, and her dad says that the blood controls her, and this is how he's gonna fix her. He then opens the shutters in the ceiling, which lets in the sunlight, and Caroline's skin starts burning and she screams. So yeah, not sure if you were ready for some daddy-daughter torture scenes, but it's what we're getting into in this episode. So Damien and Elena are road tripping in his car to Chicago, and Elena's looking out the window holding the antique necklace that Stefan gave her back in season 1. Damon pulls a bunch of Stefan's journals from the back seat where he documented his first time in Chicago and tells Elena to read them so she's prepared for what she's about to see. But she doesn't want to read his private diary because these are his private thoughts, and as a diary girly herself, she understands the importance of that. And she says besides, she's already seen Stefan at his darkest time so she can handle it. And that's really naive because Elena, you saw him have one blood relapse at the end of season 1. You haven't seen what he was like in his true Ripper days. He didn't even rip anyone's head off back in season 1. Damon then grabs one of the journals and reads an entry from March 12, 1922. Stefan wrote down that he blacks out for days and wakes up in stranger's bed in places he doesn't recognize with women he doesn't remember. Damon's like, "Oh, I'm shocked. Stefan's not a virgin." And Elena's like, "Just get your eyes on the road, Grandma." Something that I think is really interesting that I can't stop thinking about, I heard another creator mention it, about how so many of Stefan's victims are always young women. So I do want to kind of take note of that. See if this is a reoccurring pattern for Stefan, because I feel like Damon kind of just feeds on anyone. But Stefan, you have to wonder. And I love Stefan. I'm a Stefussy guy myself, but just putting it out there. Like, if I was a vampire and I wanted to feed on, like, living humans, I would at least go after, like, you know, horrible people, like how Edward did in Breaking Dawn Part 2. Anyway, we go back into a flashback to the 1920s where Stefan is watching that blonde woman he was talking to earlier, dancing and listening to the music while he's with some of his friends, and they're all being really loud. And she goes up to them and is like, "Excuse me, gentlemen, we can't even hear Gloria sing, so why don't you stick a sock in it?" Stefan's like, "I'm sorry, am I offending you?" And she says, "It would take a lot more than a baby face like his to offend her." Classic old-timey flirting, I suppose. She leaves and he follows her, asking if he can get her name, and she says when he's earned it. I really love these flashbacks, but I do remember the first time I watched it thinking how strange it was seeing Stefan flirt with another woman. I mean, of course, Elena wasn't alive at this time, but prior to this, we'd only seen him flirt with Elena and Catherine, who look identical, so this is a very interesting feeling. So back in present day, Stefan and Klaus show up to that same bar that he was at in the flashbacks, and he's really shocked that it's still there. Then a woman shows up saying that she remembers them, and Stefan notices that it's Gloria. Where are you, Gloria? There she is. Gloria! So yeah, Gloria is the same witch from the 1920s, but how is she still alive in 2010, you wonder? Stefan asks the same question, and Klaus is like, "Gloria is a very powerful witch," and she's like, "I can slow down the aging with herbs and whatnot, but it'll catch up to me soon." Klaus asks Stefan to fix them up a drink at the bar, so he leaves and Klaus sits down to chat with Gloria, but Stefan eavesdrops on them with his vamp hearing. Gloria tells Klaus that she knows why he's here, a hybrid seeking out to make more hybrids, news travels, and he asks what he's doing wrong then, because he did break the curse, and Gloria says that every spell cell has a loophole, but a curse that old means she'll have to contact the witch who created it. And Klaus is like, well, that'll be the original witch, and she's very much dead. Gloria says she can contact the original witch, but she needs Rebecca. Who's Rebecca, you wonder? Give it a minute. Klaus is not a fan of that idea, but Gloria says that Rebecca has what she needs. Stefan then interrupts their conversation because he's found a photo at the bar of Stefan and Klaus together all the way back from the 1920s. Naturally, he's very confused, thinking that he only met Klaus a couple months back. And all Klaus has to say is, Chicago's a magical place, Stefan. So we go over to the Forbes house with Sheriff Liz Forbes, who we haven't seen this season yet. She's leaving Caroline a voicemail saying that she's home after a few all-nighters after the station and wants to catch up with her for lunch. But then when she gets off the phone, she hears a knock at the door and it's Tyler, looking very concerned. So back in the cell, Caroline is screaming as the sun burns her skin. Bill closes the shutters and she's pleading to him, saying she doesn't hurt anyone, begging him to stop. It's really sad. And she says that she can handle the urges, but he holds a blood bag to her and her red and veiny vamp eyes come out. And he says if she could handle the urges, then this wouldn't happen. She just keeps apologizing over and over again. And he says that he's conditioning her to associate vampirism with pain. So in time, the thought of human blood will make her repress her vampire instincts completely. Crazy talk. She says it's impossible and he can't change who she is. And he says he can. And he tells her to remember this feeling and pulls down the shutters again to burn her skin with the sun and torture her. God damn. So this whole scene with Caroline and her father is sort of like how throughout the whole show, really, we have that allegory for alcoholism with Stefan and his addiction to human blood. It's kind of like how the other vampires can consume blood in moderation, but he can't because he's got an addiction to it and he needs to abstain from it. It's kind of like drinking in moderation versus being sober. It's that kind of allegory. And this allegory with Bill trying to change Caroline and her instincts and who she naturally is sort of like an allegory for gay conversion therapy. Stick with me here. This is obviously part of who she is. She cannot control it. She cannot change it. Just like people who are born gay cannot change that, cannot control it, and their parents send them away to conversion therapy where they basically get tortured into trying to become straight, something that they can never be. And what's even more messed up about it is that Bill himself is gay. This is just how I see it and how a lot of people see it, and I just think it's really ironic that he's trying to convert his daughter to be something that she's not when he himself is gay. But anyhow, whatever. So Damon and Elena arrive to Stefan's old Chicago apartment, and she asks why of all places Stefan chose to live here, because it's pretty dingy. And Damon says that there was an all-girls college across the street, but it got shut down for attendance issues. And Elena's like, stop, Damon, you're not going to scare me. But that basically insinuates that he killed so many of the girls at the college they had to shut down the school. Elena, wake up! So Damon breaks through the door, and it's really dingy and dusty and dated, and clearly no one's been there for a very long time. And Damon opens a secret pantry and tells Elena to have a look. She looks inside and sees there's a bunch of alcohol and is like, oh wow, Damon, Stefan hid his alcohol, what a monster. And he's like, look at the wall. And then Elena looks to the side and there is a wall with a bunch of names etched into it. And Elena's like, oh my god, are these all of Stefan's victims? And Damon's like, is it starting to get a bit real now? And Elena's like, okay, fine, what were you doing in the 1920s? And Damon's like, I had my own fair share of fun in Chicago, but I was avoiding Stefan because he was a ripper douchebag. Damon then goes to leave because he's gonna go to Stefan's old stomping ground and tells Elena to stay here and work out a plan on how to get Stefan to come with them, and he'll come back when he finds him. So Stefan's walking with Klaus through a warehouse, asking why he doesn't remember him, and if he knew him, why didn't he say anything? Klaus isn't answering him and he demands that he does. So Klaus says, let's just say we didn't get off to a great start. In fact, he hated him when he first met him. So then we cut to another 1920s Chicago flashback where Stefan and the gorgeous blonde vamp are feeding on a woman together at the bar. He then compliments her necklace and she says, thank you, a very powerful witch gave it to me a long time ago. And get this, it's the same necklace that Stefan gave to Elena in season 1. A lot of necklace talk in the next few episodes. Still in the flashback, Klaus shows up and grabs the blonde vamp and says it's time to leave. Stefan stands up all pissed and asks who this guy is, and the blonde vamp tells him not to do anything because Nick Klaus, is a lot stronger than he looks. Klaus says that he's bored and he wants to leave, and Rebecca tells him that he can go without her because she's not his girlfriend, and he's like, no, you're my sister, which means you have to do what I say. First of all, very weird comment. Why does your sister have to do what you have to say? I don't know. Sexism in the 1920s? Very weird. But then it still continues into present day, but I bear with. This character, this blonde vampire that Stefan was talking to, is Rebecca Michelson, another original vampire, another original sibling, Klaus's half-sister. You guys, Rebecca is one of my favorite characters. She is such a goddamn hoot. I'm so excited she's joined the group. In present day, Stefan is processing this information that Klaus told him, like, OMG, I knew another original vampire. Then Klaus opens a coffin and we see Rebecca in a 1920s outfit with a dagger in her chest. So just as a little refresh, you cannot kill an original at this stage. There's no way. They're truly immortal. Back when they were created, there was an ancient white oak tree that was used to create them, the first ever vampires, but they burned it to the ground so that no one could use the tree as a weapon against them because it was the only thing anything that could kill them. But the witches collected the ash and fashioned a dagger that would you dip the dagger in the ash, insert it into an original vampire, which only a human can do, then it will incapacitate them, basically making them dead until it gets pulled back out. Now that we're back up to speed, Rebecca herself has this dagger inside of her, which, I mean, can you take a guess who put it in her? After we saw Klaus dagger Elijah at the end of the season 2 finale. That's why he hasn't shown up, by the way. He's in a dagger in a coffin, along with the rest of the originals. So anyway, Klaus pulls the dagger out of Rebecca, and after some time, he's like, stop being so dramatic, Rebecca, wake up. Stefan says he doesn't even recognize Rebecca, and Klaus is like, don't tell her that. Rebecca's temper is worse than mine. At this point, Stefan's frustrated and is asking Klaus if he's going to tell him what's going on and why he wants Stefan here. Klaus continues dodging the question and tells Stefan that he has some very useful talent, and in fact, he learned some of his favorite tricks from Stefan back in the 20s. We then cut back to a 20s flashback where Klaus is sitting with Rebecca and Stefan, and he asks Stefan what makes him worthy of an original vampire like his sister, because she's a pure vampire and he's nothing but a diluted bloodline, because all vampires come from original, which is very important towards the end of the season, okay? Clock that. Anyway, Stefan asks Klaus where the rest of his family is, and he says that he killed most of them, and Stefan asks if Rebecca's okay with that, and she says they all had a chance to choose a side. She grabs Klaus's hand and says she chose the right one. So clearly Klaus has got this like weird manipulation and relationship with Rebecca. They then get interrupted by a man who asks where his wife is, and they all laugh at him, and then Stefan calls over a woman named Delilah, who's his wife. So Stefan compels the husband and wife to sit down, and he takes a blade out of his pocket, slices the wife Lila's wrist, and lets the blood fall into a martini glass. He tells her to go get that cleaned up, and the husband's like, what are you doing? And Stefan tells the husband he would like him to join him for a drink, and he compels the man to drink his wife's own blood. Naturally, he starts choking, and Stefan and Rebecca and Klaus all sadistically start laughing. It's really, really dark and twisted. And Stefan asks the guy for his name. He doesn't want to give it to him, and he's like, would you like another drink? And then he gives him his name. Back in present day, Klaus tells Stefan that he was his #1 fan, and Stefan asks why he should believe any of this. And Klaus goes over to a guard in the warehouse, compels him to tell Rebecca to meet him at Gloria's bar when she wakes, and let her feed on his carotid artery until he dies. Like, just so nonchalantly. And Stefan asks where they're going, and Klaus is like, you think I'm lying, Stefan? I'm gonna prove it to you by showing you a secret you entrusted me with. We're going to your old apartment, which is where Elena is. Oh my god, the run-ins, it's so anxiety inducing. Like, Klaus is so close so many times to finding out that Elena's alive. So Damon makes it to Stefan's old stomping ground at Gloria's bar, and he bumps into her, and Gloria's like, I always liked you better. I see your brother's still running with the wrong crowd. And Damon's like, oh, so Stefan's been here? Where is he and Klaus? And Gloria's like, they're fetching something for me that I need, but they'll be back later. He then grabs Gloria and is like, come on, Gloria, don't be a tease. What errand is it? She doesn't answer him, saying he may be cute, but he's still a vampire. So Elena's still in Stefan's old apartment, reading his journal entry from the 20s when he says that Lexi found him, his best friend, and she's trying to get him to turn his humanity back on, and he's back on the animal blood. Elena smiles, feeling like there's still hope, but then she hears Klaus and Stefan in the hallway, and she freaks out and goes to hide. When they get to the door, Klaus is really suspicious, seeing that the place has been broken into, but Stefan plays it off, saying it's been vacant for decades. People probably break into it all the time. Anyways, Klaus says he brought Stefan here because he can never quite figure out why he wanted Liam's name, until Stefan told him his secret part of his ritual. Elena, who's hiding in the secret pantry with the alcohol, freaks when she sees the names written on the wall, realizing that Klaus is going to go in there with Stefan. Oh. Outside, Klaus continues, saying that Stefan would write the names of his victims on a wall so he could relive the kill. He then opens the secret door, but luckily Elena's like tucked behind the wall so he doesn't see her. But Stefan walks in and does see Elena, and I do have to question, like, how do their senses work? Like, could Klaus not smell that there was a human there, especially a human he's fed on before? Anyway, this is a huge moment because this is their first time seeing each other, locking eyes, since Stefan left town like 3 months ago, really taking in this moment, being super romantic, and Stefan is just in shock. And then he tells Klaus, look what I found. Elena freaks, thinking that he's going to expose her, but then he just grabs a bottle of bourbon from the year that him and Klaus met. He goes out, closes the door, and they both leave to go find someone to pair it with. So quite a bit of time has passed now, and Elena's still in the old apartment, hiding behind a wall with a vervain dart. Not sure why she just didn't get out of there, but she hears footsteps approaching, but the door opens and it's just Damon, and she's like, where the hell are you? I texted you an hour ago. He throws a bag at her with a bunch of clothes and tells her to make herself presentable because she's gonna go see Stefan, and she's like, did you just ignore the part where Klaus almost found me? And Damon's like, I had an hour to think about how dumb of a decision it was to leave you here, get over it, and move on. And he says that he'll distract Klaus so she can deal with Stefan, but she's gonna have to be quick, otherwise Klaus will just kill him, and he asks if she can do this, and she says that she can. So back at Gloria's bar, Klaus and Stefan are drinking, and Stefan asks if this is why he wanted him to be his wingman, because he likes the way that he tortured innocent people. And Klaus says that that's half of it, but the other half is that Stefan used to want to be his wingman. We then cut to another flashback in the 20s, where Stefan is at the bar with Klaus, hyping him up, telling him that he's not an abomination, and his family's just jealous because they could never be a king like him. It's kind of like a weird, gross, red pill alpha male conversation, but anyway, Klaus notices Rebecca eyeing Stefan up from across the bar, saying that Rebecca fancies him, but he should warn him that Rebecca falls in love quickly and intensely, so be careful, because she's mad. Stefan laughs, but Klaus says that when Rebecca inevitably leaves Stefan, which she will, she can't help it, he shouldn't let his heart let him do anything stupid. Stefan takes that in and tells Klaus that he's a good friend and he's glad that he's met him. Very strange seeing these two get along and Stefan actually like him. And back in present day, Stefan's processing what he's just been told. So back in Caroline's torture cell, Bill is telling her her that when Carol called him and told him that she was a vampire, he sat down and cried. Well, okay. Caroline says that she's fine and she's learned to adapt, but she can't be fixed. He tells her that she just needs to try, holds a blood bag to her face, and she tenses for a bit, but then eventually the red eyes and veins come out and he pulls back and she's like, I'm sorry, Daddy, I can't help it, I'm starving. And she's like, why are you trying so hard to fix me? And he yells and says, so I don't have to kill you. When he says this, her eyes go red and veiny again and she looks down, so that obviously her natural vampire predatory instincts coming through, but you just don't get it because you're so narrow-minded. Anyway, she apologizes and he pulls back and says that the sun's gone down, so they're gonna have to try again tomorrow. Also, she's been in this chair this whole time, so I have to wonder, like, do vampires need to pee? Is she just peeing on the chair? Anyway, moving on. So he goes out of the cell, locks her in there, but when he comes out, Liz is standing there pointing a gun at him, saying that that's our daughter in there, Bill. She loves you. She trusts you. And Bill says, well, then she'll trust me to do the right thing. Not because she's a monster, Liz, but because she's our daughter and we love her. Then Tyler comes down the staircase to the door and Bill tries to stop him from opening it, but then Liz shoots a bullet into the wall near Bill. And it's a lot because, like, Caroline's already gone through this whole parent having to deal with her being a vampire with their mother. Now she's having to go through it with her dad as well. Like, can she catch a break? Anyway, Tyler goes in, breaks the chains off of Caroline and pulls her from the chair. She tells him to get her ring and he does, and he saves her. Oh, so I'm assuming that Tyler told Liz what he found out from Carol, and Carol knew Bill, and then Liz knew about the Forbes cell, and that's kind of how they found her. It makes sense. Anyway, so still at Gloria's bar in Chicago, Stefan asks Klaus if they were such great friends, why does he only know him as the hybrid dick who sacrificed his girlfriend on an altar? And Klaus says that all good things must come to an end. Back to a flashback. Stefan's dancing with Rebecca while Klaus is watching, but he gets distracted as he hears a bunch of commotion outside with his vampire. Then the Chicago police arrive, sending bullets flying throughout the bar. Stefan and Rebecca hide, and they see on the floor wooden bullets, so Stefan realizes that the police know about them. Rebecca says that means he's here, and Stefan asks who, but before she can answer him, Klaus comes and grabs Rebecca and takes her away. Her necklace falls on the ground, and Stefan goes to pick it up as she continues running, but Klaus brings Stefan back up and looks him in the eye, and he compels Stefan to forget about him and Rebecca and thanks him, saying that he'd forgotten what it felt like to have a brother. So they had a really deep friendship, built on really dark and questionable morals, but a deep friendship nonetheless. In present day, Klaus says that he had to compel him because it was time for him and Rebecca to have a clean slate and move on, but Stefan says he shouldn't have to cover his tracks unless he was running from someone. Stefan then sees Damon at the door gesturing him to come outside, and he tells Klaus that he needs to get a drink, a real one, and Klaus just waves him off, so he leaves. Outside, Stefan vamp speeds and pins Damon against the car, asking what's wrong with him, and he's like, what's wrong with you? One day you're killing Andy, another day you're saving my life. Are you good? Bad? What is it? Stefan tells Damon that Klaus almost saw Elena and he needs to get her out of Chicago, but Damon says that she won't go until she's checked him into vampire rehab, which further proves my alcoholism analogy, but moving on. Stefan tells Damon that Elena is the key to everything. Klaus can't know that she's alive. Damon's confused, and Stefan says that she was supposed to die in the ritual, and now Klaus can't make his hybrids, and his witch is seconds away from finding that out. So tell Elena to go home and forget about me. But Damon tells Stefan he should tell her himself, and then he looks to the side and sees Elena standing there in a cute little purple dress. So back inside the bar, Damon has gone inside to distract Klaus so Elena can talk to Stefan. Klaus is like, oh, I guess they just let any of the riffraff in, and Damon's like, hey, just give me my brother back and you'll never have to see me again. And Klaus is like, no, I'm torn because I promised Stefan that I would spare your life, but how many freebies can I really give? And you clearly want to die, so then he grabs Damon by the throat. Outside, Stefan tells Elena that she shouldn't be there, and she tells him to just come home with her, and she goes to give him a hug, and from behind him, she lifts up her arm to plunge a vervain dart into his back, but she does it so slowly, and he pulls out of the hug and grabs her arm, and pulls the dart out of her hand, and he's like, how much clearer can I be? I don't want to come home. Inside, while he's being choked by Klaus, Damon says that he should just have him as a wingman instead. He's much more fun than Stefan. Klaus throws him across the room and breaks a leg off of one of the chairs, and is about to go stake him, when the stake gets caught on fire, and it was done by Gloria, and she's like, nah, not in my bar, you take that outside. But Klaus just tells Damon that when Stefan's done with him, he's not gonna want to come back home. Outside, Stefan told Elena what he told Damon about Klaus and his hybrids and it not working because Elena's still being alive. And she tells him that she knows that he's just trying to protect her, and he tells her that even if he does come back home, it's never gonna be the same. He's left bodies scattered from Florida to Tennessee, innocent humans. She tells him that Lexi found him like this before in the 20s and saved him, and he's like, yeah, what did I do after that? I spent the next 30 years trying to pull myself back together, which for a vampire is nothing, but for you, Elena, that's half your life. She tells him that she can't just give up on him, and he says that she can. That part of his life is done. It's over. He doesn't want to see her. He doesn't want to be with her. He just wants her to go. Ouch. But he's really just clearly saying this to make Elena leave and protect her. It's like saying that thing to hurt someone so they let you go. Over at the Forbes house in Caroline's room, she's finished up drinking a blood bag and it gives the empty bag to her mom. So she's really okay with this now, which is nice. And she's talking to Caroline about her dad, saying that his family, they have beliefs that they were taught throughout generations and they were taught never to stray away from them. And Caroline's like, but you did. And Liz says, because Caroline taught her to look at things in a different way. And Caroline's just really upset because she thought that her dad was the one who got her. And Liz says he will again, which this could be more emotionally impactful if we had seen scenes of Caroline with her father before of them getting along, but we only heard about it in passing. Anyway, I digress. Then Liz leaves the room when Tyler comes in and he jokes, asking if now's a bad time to lay into Caroline for sneaking out on him. She laughs and he gets into bed with her and he holds her as she cries, saying that her dad hates her. And it's honestly so devastating. I can't even deal. So back in Chicago, Klaus goes back to the warehouse to see that Rebecca is not in her coffin and the security guard is dead. He calls out for her and then she speeds up to him and stabs him in the heart with the dagger that was once in her and tells him to go to hell. So back in the 1920 Chicago flashback, Klaus and Rebecca are waiting by a car and he tells her that they need to leave and she's like, not without Stefan. And he tells her that Stefan's not coming. They need to leave without him because you'll draw too much attention. But she says she doesn't want to run anymore. She's tired. That's all they do. She wants to be with Stefan. And he tells her, fine, she needs to choose then, him or Stefan. After the briefest moment, he just looks at her and is like, that's what I thought, get in the car. But Rebecca hasn't moved yet and she says, goodbye, Nick. So he just assumed that she would choose him. So she goes to turn around and leave, but Klaus vamp speeds in front of her and stabs her in the heart with the dagger, sending her into an original slumber. Back in present day, Klaus pulls the dagger out of him and tells Rebecca not to sulk. She knew it wouldn't work on him. Klaus says that he knows that Rebecca's upset with him, so he's gonna let this go just this once, but he's brought her a welcome home gift. And then he calls out Stefan and he walks out and Rebecca looks at him like shocked to see him again, but Stefan doesn't recognize her. So then Klaus goes up to him and tells Stefan that he can remember now. So Stefan starts to get flashes of his twisted love story memories with Rebecca and he looks at her and smiles, but then Klaus calls his name and he turns around and looks at Klaus and then he gets memories flashing back of his twisted friendship with Klaus and he's like, we were friends, and Klaus is like, we still are. So this is like some weird reunion. He then tells Rebecca that the reason she's here is because Gloria says that she has something that she needs to contact the original witch. Rebecca's like, of course I have it. And she goes to touch her neck, can't find it, starts freaking out, digging through the coffin and is like, where's my necklace? And Klaus is like, tell me that's not what she needs. And he's screaming and she throws over the coffin in a fit of rage. So the next day in the Salvatore house, Damon's speaking to Catherine. She's once again on a payphone and he's like, you were right. And she's like, of course, I'm always right. And she's like, let me guess, it ended with heartbreak and tears. And he asks where she is again. And she's like, why? I want to rub sunscreen on my back? Goodbye, Damon. And she hangs up the payphone. We then cut back to the flashback in the 1920 Chicago of the bar and all the rubble and chaos after the police shot it up. And we see Catherine is there. So she was trailing Klaus then as well. My girl, she's always keeping an eye out on him. And she's wearing a hideous wig. Or she had a hideous haircut. I don't know. Let's move past it. I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, she vamp speeds away and hides behind a wall when Stefan shows up and picks up Rebecca's necklace off the floor. He gets stopped by a man saying that he's Chicago PD and asks if he's seen these people before and shows him a police sketch drawing of Rebecca and Klaus. And Stefan's like, I've never seen those people before in my life. And he's like, okay, thanks, we're done here, boys, and they all leave. And we see Catherine's face looking real sly, so of course she watched this whole situation. So throughout the years, she's been keeping tabs on Klaus, figuring out a way to find his weaknesses. And then we see in present day, Catherine walking away from the payphone, and she gets into a taxi that is written on the side of it that says Chicago Taxis. So Catherine Pierce, in present day, is in Chicago, trailing Klaus once again. Girl, she was barely in this episode and she ate. That she did. Anyway, I really love this episode. I always, most of the time, enjoy the flashback episodes, and this was such a fun one. It was such a cute, interesting addition to the series. We get a new city. We were in Tennessee, now we're in Chicago. We get fun, spicy flashbacks. We get an introduction of another original character who's an iconic character, and the sibling relationship between her and Nick, or Klaus, is just iconic. So, such a great episode. Anyway, getting into episode 4, titled Disturbing Behavior. Your mind's in Disturbia. It's like the darkness in the light. So the episode begins in Chicago. Stefan and Klaus are in a clothing store while Rebecca is trying on some clothes, trying to adapt to the 21st century. She thinks that the way that women dress nowadays is quite slutty. In her day, she wasn't even allowed to wear trousers, and now she's gonna wear a semi-see-through dress. She's also pissed with Stefan and Klaus because Klaus is being grumpy towards her for losing the necklace. She's like, I didn't lose it, it just got misplaced, and I've been in a coffin for the last 90 years. And Stefan's like complimenting her look, and she's like, I could always tell when you're lying, Stefan. So she's pissed at both of them, and Stefan leaves the clothing store to get some air. But outside, he sees Catherine, and she gestures over to him, so he goes to follow her. So back at the Gilbert house in Mystic Falls, Damon is helping Elena make some chili, because there's another Mystic Falls small town event going on, and everyone's presenting their chilies. It's like some weird cook-off, I don't really know. They're having banter about their chili, flirting, and then Rick shows up, and it's kind of awkward because he's asking why Damon is there. Elena says he's there to make sure that she doesn't break after spending the whole summer looking for someone who didn't want to be found, and she says that she's fine, but Damon says that she's in denial denial. And she's like, no, I'm not. And he's like, well, then why are you still wearing the necklace Stefan gave you? This necklace, huh? Back in Chicago, Stefan asks what Catherine is doing there, because if Klaus finds out that she's there, he'll kill her. And she's all glad to know that you still care. And she confirms that Rebecca's necklace, that's the one that Stefan gave Elena, right? Stefan says they don't know that and goes to leave. And Catherine says that she wants to know what Stefan's up to, because whatever it is, she wants in. And he's not budging. And Catherine tells Stefan not to get too cocky, because Klaus is smarter than him and everyone. And she warns him about Rebecca, because that sister will ruin him. And he's all, nice to know that you still care. Well, of course she cares, Stefan. Catherine's in love with you. Didn't we establish that in season 2? Back at the Gilbert house, Jeremy wakes up from a nap in his room and he opens his eyes to see that Anna is laying right next to him, calling his name. He freaks, wondering why and how she's there. And she freaks that he can actually see her, saying that she's been yelling at him for days, trying to make contact. And she asks what changed that they could finally talk. And he's like, I don't know, I was dreaming about you. And they have a bit of a moment, and it's really awkward because remember, he's dating my girl Bonnie. Speaking of Bonnie, the doorbell rings and Elena goes to answer it, and Caroline shows up at the door and is like, I brought you a gift. And it's Bonnie back from her summer trip with her dad's family. Oh, Julie Plec, why do you remove Bonnie from several episodes over the past 3 seasons just to go visit her family and then show up? I need her in every episode. She's the glue that holds the show together. And Bonnie's like to Elena and Caroline, geez guys, I leave for the summer and your lives fall apart. And then Jeremy runs downstairs, reunites with Bonnie, and they hug, and it's really cute. But over Bonnie's shoulder, he can see Anna in the mirror. Which, should you be able to see ghosts in the mirror? I question that. So Damon's walking down Town Square with Liz Forbes, who's updating him on the Bill situation. She's keeping him detained because she wants to wait till the Vervain goes out of his system so Damon can compel him to forget about Caroline being a vampire. Damon's like, can't I just kill him? And Liz makes a comment about her not being okay with his lifestyle, so just like you're on thin ice. And he's like, my lifestyle? Is that the same thing you said to your husband? He puts in a couple cheap gay jokes in there. It's not funny. So Damon goes inside and talks to Bill and is like really curious about how he thinks he can control a vampire from feeding into their basic instincts. And he's like, and Bill goes on the spiel about having control, and Damon's like, if there's anyone who doesn't need control, it's your control freak of a daughter. And he says this in front of both of her parents, which is kind of rude. And Liz is like, Damon, just get on with it. So Damon goes to bite Bill to check if he doesn't have any Vervain left in his system. His blood is clean, so he compels Bill to forget all about Caroline being a vampire, and that he just came back to do some back to school shopping with her. Now leave. So back in Chicago at the bar, Gloria is doing a spell where she's trying to look for the necklace using Rebecca as a conduit because she wore the necklace for 1,000 years. Stefan's getting really anxious at this point because they're getting closer and closer to finding out that Elena has the necklace and she's still alive. Back in Mystic Falls at the Gilbert house, the 3 girls, Elena, Bonnie, and Caroline, are making the chili with, and Elena then screams out in pain, and they ask if the chili spilt on her, and she's like, no, my necklace, it burned me. And then back in Chicago, Klaus and Rebecca ask Gloria what she saw, where's the necklace? And she's like, it's not as simple as that. I get images, okay? I just saw a girl with her friend. And Rebecca's like, yeah, a dead girl with dead friends if I don't get my necklace back. Gloria says she's gonna need some more time to dive back in and get the details, and Klaus and Rebecca are hovering over her, and she's like, and some space, you're harshing my juju. Stefan breaks up the situation and suggests that they go get a bite. So over at the Lockwood estate, during another one of Mystic Falls' famous events, Bonnie comes over to Elena and Caroline that are sitting on some benches far away from the crowd, and she's brought her grimoire and gets the necklace from Elena to try and figure out what's going on with it. While Bonnie's performing her spell, Caroline asks Elena if she's switching Salvatore's. What's going on between her and Damon? Elena's getting awkward and deflects from the situation, and then Bonnie interrupts because the necklace is flying and levitating in the air. They ask if she's doing that, and Bonnie says no, the necklace has its own magic. It's getting real creepy now. The necklace is levitating on its own. So over at the chili station, Damon's doing a tasting, and he's talking to Rick, saying that the founders' parties are just an excuse for the council to meet up in secret and talk about the vampires. Rick changes the subject and tells Damon that he needs to lay off of Elena because he's looking after her, and whatever's going on between them, it's a bad idea. Before things get too heated between them, Sheriff Forbes comes over to grab Damon for the meeting. Still inside the Lockwood mansion, Jeremy goes to meet Anna in a private room, and she asks why he hasn't told Bonnie that he's seeing her, and he says it's because he doesn't understand how this is even possible. Anna then explains how, that if she pushes from the other side trying to contact him, and if he's thinking about her, then it could pull her into him. And then he asks what the other side is, and she doesn't really know how to explain it, but all she knows is that she's all alone. It's like being part of their world, but no one can hear or see her. Jeremy then asks about Vicky, and Anna says that whenever Jeremy says that he sees Vicky, she feels a darkness. And whenever she tries to tell him to stay away from her, crazy stuff happens, like she's trying to push her out. It's all very vague, but Anna tells him to try not to let Vicky in because she can't get in if he doesn't let her. They have a bit of a moment, and she touches his hand and she apologizes, saying she knows that he can't feel anything, but he says to do it again. And they have like a Tarzan and Jane moment, holding their hands up to each other. It's a slightly tough situation to be in because I really, out of all the relationships Jeremy's had, my favorite he had was with Anna. I really love their relationship together, but at the same time, don't mess with Bonnie's feelings. I love Bonnie to my core. I get shivers thinking about people hurting her, Jeremy. So back in Chicago, Rebecca is really bored because her girl is dead, and Stefan says he's gotta go, and Rebecca asks Klaus where he's going, and he says to write her name on a wall. But where Stefan really went was back to Gloria to ask her what she saw, and she says she heard something interesting. The girls holding the necklace were talking about him, and he asked why she never said anything to Klaus. We then learn something from Gloria because she says she doesn't want to help that hybrid half-breed, but the necklace is a talisman from the original witch herself, and she wants it. Stefan says he can't help her, and he goes to leave, but then she threatens to tell Klaus about what he really knows. He charges towards her, and she uses her witchy voodoo to fry his brain, and says she guesses she's gonna have to get it out of him the hard way. When a vampire's gonna learn not to mess with witches, honestly? Some time passes, and Stefan wakes up chained to a table with Gloria above him. There's a bunch of candles circling him. He asks why he can't move, and it's because she's paralyzed him. She's bleeding him out, and we see that his wrists are bleeding down into these vials, and there's steam coming out of it. And she's like, you feel that? That's your essence. She says she's a big fan of herbs, and her favorite one is vervain. She rubs it on her hand and rubs it on Stefan's chest. He screams, and it helps her get deeper into his psyche. So back at the Lockwood Mansion in Mystic Falls, the Founders Council's meeting wraps up. Everyone leaves while Carol, Liz, and Damon are having a drink. And then Bill shows up and says, hey, I wonder if you think that the council is clueless to what's going on or that they're just stupid. So Bill somehow bypassed Damon's compulsion to leave town and is at the meeting. Over at the Gilbert house, Jeremy's in his room with Bonnie, and she's got her grimoires and a bunch of candles because they're trying to look for answers about the necklace's magic. And he asked why Bonnie can't just ask the dead witch spirits from the abandoned witch house where the massacre happened. And she said that she lost contact with them when she brought Jeremy back to life. And that they said she messed with the balance of nature so there would be consequences. And yes, they were the ghosts, but she doesn't know that yet because Jeremy's not being honest with her, which is one of the most important things in a relationship. Jeremy. Bonnie then asks Jeremy about how he's doing because Elena says he's been struggling since he came back to life, and he just brushes it off saying that he's fine. Behind Bonnie, Anna shows up and is telling Jeremy that the darkness, it's here. Bonnie's grimoires then light on fire, and Bonnie performs a spell to take them out. They're both shook and like, what is this darkness? Vicky? You have to wonder. So back in Chicago, after some initial fighting, Stefan can't hold back anymore, and Gloria taps deep into Stefusi's psyche and sees the girl with the necklace, and how he loved her, and how he would do anything for her, and has, and is wondering why Klaus wants something to do with her, and then sees Stefan's memories from the curse, and is like, oh, she's the doppelganger. She's the key to breaking the curse, and she's supposed to be dead, but she's not, and that's why Klaus can't make any of his hybrids. So she's connected all of the dots, but then all of a sudden, in a twist of fate, Catherine shows up and is like, well, this is creepy, and she snaps Gloria's neck and she dies. Well, look, I mean, I like Gloria, she was fun, but don't mess with Stefusi, and you know Catherine's gonna come in clutch. So she's dead. R.I.P. Gloria. Gloria. So back at the Lockwood Mansion in Mystic Falls, Caroline is leaving with Elena, and she asks about the necklace, and she says she doesn't know because Stefan never said where he got it from. Then Rick shows up wondering where Damon is, but then Caroline sees her dad and is like, what is he doing here? And it's really awkward because of the whole daddy-daughter torture thing, obviously, and she says she's gonna go hide in Tyler's room. As Elena and Rick are leaving outside, Damon shows up saying that he compelled Bill Forbes to leave town, yet he's still here, and he was all for Vane, and he's like weirdly immune to compulsion. So it turns out that Bill wants to take control of the town council because he thinks it's been compromised, and Rick's like, yeah, it has. And Damon's like, he wants to put vervain in the town's water supply, and Elena's like, maybe that's a good idea, you know, now that Stefan's not here and Damon's like, to what? To keep me in check? Damon's really pissed off at this point, and he wants to kill Bill. I just killed my ex, not the best idea. So Rick tries to stop him, and Damon's like, that's 3 times you've gotten in my way today, Rick. So he looks over at Rick's hand to see that he's wearing his Gilbert immunity ring and snaps Rick's neck. Elena's like, Damon, what the hell? And he goes inside. Back in Chicago, Catherine is talking to Stefan, and they're cleaning up Gloria's body, and she gives him some advice regarding his plan, saying that Klaus is too paranoid to trust him, so he should get closer with Rebecca to make Klaus jealous, because she still loves him, and then she can help Stefan gain Klaus's trust. But Catherine wonders why Stefan wants Klaus's trust beyond keeping him away from Mystic Falls, and he doesn't really want to share, but Catherine's like, really? I just saved your life. So he gives in and is like, okay, I knew them back in the 1920s. They were running from someone, and I want to find that someone. And Catherine's like, oh yeah, I heard stories about a hunter, and they both want to know why an original vampire who's truly immortal, can't be killed, is scared of a vampire hunter. Catherine wants in on the plan, and he's like, that's nice, Catherine. It's nice to want things. He's not budging, and he says that he's in this alone, so she should look elsewhere if she's looking for a diabolical partner in crime. So Tyler gets back home for a football practice to see Caroline hiding in his room. He consoles her, and they joke about him being sweaty and gross, and it's really cute. Things start getting really steamy, but it gets interrupted when Caroline gets an SOS call from Elena. Back inside, Damon finds Bill drinking some scotch, saying, everything in moderation, huh? Keeps the mind free from influence, and Damon's like, like compulsion? Bill said he tried to warn him. It's a skill he's been owning through decades. And quite frankly, Damon, your technique is lazy. So I'm thinking that maybe Bill works through the compulsion by finding loopholes, you know what I mean? I think that's how he gets past it, because I don't think a human without vervain could just completely avoid compulsion. He must understand the loopholes, but they don't really touch back on this. Anyway, Damon asks Bill why he doesn't just expose him to the council, but Bill says he's not going to expose his own daughter to those morons. Okay, but you'll torture her? Make it make sense. Damon says he's taking a risk though by taking him on, but Bill says, come on Damon, you're not self-destructive enough to kill the sheriff's ex-husband, are you? And Damon's already in a bad mood and he begs to differ, so he vamp speeds over to Bill and starts feeding on him. He's relishing in the taste of human blood because it's been a while, but then Caroline storms in, throws Damon off of Bill, and goes to offer her blood to heal her dad. He doesn't want it, but she's like, grow up, and force feeds it to him. Damon's going off at Caroline about teaching Bill a lesson, and she's like, just leave Damon. He doesn't want to, so she goes to charge at him, and he's like, you forget, little girl, I'm older than you. And she's like, yeah, well, I'm angrier. And then she completely body slams him. It's so cool seeing Caroline beat the shit out of Damon. Anyway, she grabs her dad, vamp speeds away, and then Damon sees that Elena is there and she'd watched this whole thing go down, and she tells him that he can't do this anymore. Not in this town and not around her. He asks why not? It's nothing he's never done before. And why is it so important that everyone keeps him in check? Because the last time he checked, he was still a vampire. And she's like, I wish you didn't have to act like one. And he's like, I'm not Stefan, Elena, so stop trying to turn me into him. And that really gagged her. She's speechless. So yeah, Damon's back on his self-destructive shit. I mean, this is the beginning of the classic Elena and Damon fights. Where there is passion, there is drama. So back at the Gilbert house, Jeremy's washing the ash off of his hands in his ensuite while Bonnie's cleaning up the ash in the bedroom. And then Anna shows up, so he turns on the tap and closes the door. And it's like, why are you here? You can't be here when I'm with Bonnie. And Anna's like, I'm only here because you've been thinking of me. Is that why you haven't told her? You don't want her to know that you still care about me. He tells her that he just can't do this anymore, and Anna starts crying, begging him not to shut her out. But he closes his eyes, and that's exactly what he does. And then she can no longer communicate with him. He goes into the room and tells Bonnie everything that's been going on. We don't actually hear the conversation because it's drowned out. Us seeing the conversation from Anna's perspective, it's all echoey, and she's like, please, Jeremy, I don't want to be alone anymore. It's really sad. Guys, I have a soft spot for Anna. Everything she went through in season 1, that's my homegirl right there. But don't mess with Bonnie. So back in Chicago, Stefan's in the warehouse looking at all of Klaus's coffins where he keeps his family's daggered up. Rebecca then shows up saying that Klaus went to go check on his witch, which she's dead. And she makes a joke about how drab the family cargo is. Stefan asks why Rebecca doesn't just undagger them, and Rebecca says because her brother would just hunt her down and dagger her. And Stefan asks why she still cares about him, and she says she's hated him for so long, but at a certain point it just got exhausting. Stefan mentions to her that when he met them they were on the run, and asks who they were running from, and how it's strange that Klaus would be afraid of anyone. And Rebecca tells Stefan that no one in this world is truly fearless. Fearless! But he goes on asking who the man Klaus is afraid of is, and Rebecca says she doesn't want to talk about this anymore, and brings up what Klaus told her about how he killed the girl that Elena loved in the ritual, and how he's only with him because he saved his brother's life. She says that she thinks Klaus secretly admires Stefan because he would do anything for family, but she tells him to promise to keep that conversation a secret just between them. When they get up, she goes to grab Stefan and kiss him, and she pulls back and asks if he'll ever love anyone again like he did that girl. He says maybe one day, but Rebecca tells Stefan that she can always tell when he's lying. He tries to protest, but Rebecca tells him not to bother because his kiss already gave it away. Klaus then shows up saying that Gloria's gone and they're gonna have to find another witch, and he notices the awkward tension between them. Rebecca tells Klaus that Stefan's not with them. He was asking about Michael. So Klaus charges towards Stefan and the screen goes black. So it's the next day, and Damon is making a drink at the Salvador house waiting for Rick to wake up from his slumber, and he does, and Damon makes a joke about how it took so long. Might want to check the warranty on that ring, it might be faulty. Rick's really pissed, like, Damon, you killed me. And he's like, dude, you pissed me off. Relax, you got the ring. And he's like, you killed me. It's not okay. Damon says that he was in a bad mood because everyone was telling him how to behave. And Rick says, well, maybe everyone's right about you, Damon. And he's really pissed off at him, so their friendship's at a turmoil, at a crossroad. I'm at a crossroad. I'm not alone in my own home. Because every time Damon gets pissed at Rick, he thinks he can just snap his neck. So over in the town square, Caroline's walking with Elena, who says that Rick was right about Damon and how she was trying to change him, but if he wants to be in her life, Caroline cuts off and says, Elena, Damon's gotten under your skin. You're attracted to him. And Elena's deflecting, and Caroline tells her just to admit it, and Elena says she can't, okay? If she admits it or even thinks about it, what does it say about her? And Caroline's like, Elena, it says that you're human. So after this emotional interaction, Caroline sees her father by his car, so she goes over to talk to him, and he says that he's leaving town before someone kills him, and Bill thanks Caroline for rescuing him, and she tells him that she's gonna be okay, and he's like, honey, you're a vampire. You'll never be okay. So that left on a really depressing note. So then over at the Lockwood house, Rick is talking to Carol and Liz Forbes saying he wants to be on their town council. They say it's only reserved for founding families. And he's like, okay, well, I'm living with the Gilberts, okay? And you've got vampires in the town council, so who's really protecting the humans? So he's getting his way in onto the council, as he should, fair enough. The council is not doing a very good job. And as we know, he is a skilled vampire hunter. So outside the grill, Bonnie's sitting down and Elena comes to sit with her and asks if she can have her necklace back. She just feels weird without it. The whole Stefan Stefan of it all. So Bonnie gives Elena the necklace and says she still hasn't figured out its magic yet, and she asks her if Jeremy told her about seeing his dead ex-girlfriends over the summer. Elena clearly didn't know about this, and Bonnie's like, yeah, when I brought him back to life, I mean, the witches said there'd be consequences, and she's looking off to the side when she says this, and when she looks back straight to see Elena, Elena has disappeared. She's like, what the hell? Really weird. Back at the Salvatore house, Damon opens the front door to see Elena standing there silent, says he only accept written apologies. But then Elena starts laughing, and now it's clear to Damon that it's not Elena, it's Catherine. So that was actually Catherine who was talking to Bonnie. She stole the necklace from her. Oh, what's she up to, my girl? He asks what she wants, and she says she wants a partner in crime, asking if he wants to hit the road and leave town. So clearly she took Stefan's advice in getting another diabolical partner in crime. And Damon's like, oh yeah, might as well take a beat. This town's getting my nerves. Where we're going? And Catherine starts waving Elena's necklace in his face, saying, I won't tell you yet, but I promise it's good. Ooh, I love seeing Damon and Catherine team up together. So our final scene for this episode is Stefan is awoken in a moving truck filled with coffins, and Klaus says that Rebecca says Stefan's holding onto something, and she's got flawless instincts, borderline supernatural, so he thought he would check it out for himself. He then slides open the truck door, and we see the town square, and Klaus says to Stefan, welcome back, Stefan, to Mystic Falls. Boom! Okay, guys, this episode was good, but I do feel like it was kind of a filler. I enjoyed the Catherine of it all. I enjoyed how she was like finding her way into like all these different stories with Klaus, Stefan, Rebecca, Damon. It was fun. But the next episode is one of my favorite episodes of the Vampire Diaries ever. So let's just get into it. Season 3, Episode 5, The Reckoning. So the episode begins at Mystic Falls High at night, where Matt Donovan is in the gym working out, and he starts to hear some strange noises, like there's whooshing and shadows. So he goes to follow the noise. It's really horror-esque. And he opens a door which leads into a classroom, and he hears a noise and the light turns on, and he has stepped into a mouse trap, and there are a bunch of mouse traps all over the classroom. And then the light turns on, and Matt sees Caroline, Tyler, Elena, and Bonnie. And Caroline's really pissed because it took them hours to set up those mouse traps. And Matt's like, what's going on? And Tyler's like, oh, you forgot about senior prank night, huh? And Elena's like, yeah, come on, Matt. If I'm doing this, you're doing this. And he's like, I'm surprised any of you are doing this. Bonnie's like, Caroline's forcing us to. And Caroline gives a little speech about, come on, guys, it is a rite of passage to do senior prank night. It's the night before the start of our senior year, the best year of our lives. And this is kind of her thing for the whole episode. Elena goes to leave, and Caroline's like, where are you going? And she's like, to superglue Alark's desk shut. And she smiles and leaves, but as Elena's walking down the hallway, she turns around a corner when Klaus shows up, and naturally she freaks, and he grabs her and is like, you're supposed to be dead. Now what are we gonna do about that? Boom. So Klaus has figured out that Elena's still alive, and shit is about to go down. So Damon's driving in his car with Catherine, and there's some sexy music playing, and she asks if they should stop for a bite. A truck stop, maybe a trucker. And he's like, oh, stop being cute, Catherine. And she's like, it's impossible. And he's like, when are you gonna tell me where we're going? And she's like, when we're far away from Mystic Falls that you can't turn back. And he's like, you don't have to worry about that. Me and Mystic Falls are on a break. She's like, you and Mystic Falls, or you and Elena? Catherine continues flirting with Damon, and she starts making out with him while he's driving. But then he throws her off of him, and she's like, what the hell? And he's like, I thought I'd give it a shot. Turns out you just don't do it for me anymore. Damon loves getting his little jabs in with Catherine, as he deserves after everything she put him through. So Stefan wakes up in the back of a truck in the Mystic Falls High parking lot, where Rebecca's watching him, and she informs him that Klaus has been snapping his neck over and over again all day. So that's why he's been passed out for the whole day. Snapping a vampire's neck is essentially like giving them a nap. Stefan asks why Klaus took them back to Mystic Falls, and Rebecca says not to play dumb, because it didn't take Klaus long to figure out what Stefan was hiding. He continues playing dumb, saying he's done everything that Klaus has asked for, and Rebecca's like, yeah, but you failed to mention how that doppelganger girl is still alive. Stefan then asks where Elena is, and Rebecca says hopefully getting her head ripped off by Klaus, and he vamp speeds towards her and throws her on the ground. They start fighting, and she's like, you really do love her, don't you? Consider me jealous. And she grabs a metal rod and shoves it through his gut, and vamp speeds away. So Klaus is dragging Elena through the high school hall, saying that she's put a damper on his plans, and his guess as to why he can't create more hybrids is because she's still breathing. And she's like, if you're gonna kill me, just do it now. And he's like, not till I'm sure that I'm right. And he walks with Elena into the school gym, where he puts on his fake American accent and tells all the high school students that senior prank night has officially been busted. Go home. Klaus then recognizes two students who don't recognize him, and it's Dana and her boyfriend Chad, who he had previously like compelled when he was like possessing a Lark's body in season 2. It's a whole thing. So he asks him to stay behind, and he compels that girl Dana to lift her foot up in the air, and he compels her boyfriend Chad that if she drops her foot, he wants him to beat her to death. And Elena's like, Klaus, no one has to get hurt. And he's like, oh honey, this is just the start. So Damon stops the car and gets out, and Catherine asks why they're stopping, and he says he's tired, it's her turn. But when she goes to grab the keys from him, he throws them into the bushes and tells Catherine that they're not going anywhere until she spills her guts. So then Catherine dangles around Elena's necklace, saying that Klaus wants it and now it's hers, so it's leverage. But she tells him that when she stole the necklace from Bonnie, she found out something a lot more interesting. And she goes to open the trunk, but before she does, she asks Damon if he's willing to do whatever it takes to take Klaus down, no matter what. And he's like, yeah, obviously. And she's like, okay, because this isn't going to get you any points back home. And she opens up the trunk of the car to see that Jeremy is laying in it unconscious. Ergo, Catherine kidnapped Jeremy. So back at the high school, Caroline's setting up some more pranks by putting honey on a doorknob while Tyler is kissing the back of her neck. And she asks if he thinks that Matt's doing okay, and he's like, really? I'm kissing the back of your neck and you're bringing up your ex-boyfriend? By the way, speaking of, I put a solid line between them since they're like officially together. Cute. I also put a break in between Elena and Stefan since he said he didn't want to see her or be with her anymore, so they're broken up. Anyway, Caroline tells Tyler that Matt's their friend who they both love, and she wants to know if he thinks that he's okay. And Tyler says that he thinks that Matt feels like he doesn't have anyone to talk to anymore, and he's struggling more than he lets on, and he loves how big Caroline's heart is. And she just says that she wants to have a great senior year and she wants everyone to be happy. They start making up, but then they get interrupted by Rebecca, who says that they're adorable, and Caroline's like, excuse me, do we know you? And she's like, no, but I know you. You're Caroline, which makes you Tyler, the werewolf. And Caroline gets all defensive, like, who are you? And Rebecca's like, I'm the new girl. And then she pounces on Caroline and Tyler, and the screen goes black. So over at the indoor swimming pool, Bonnie and Matt are setting up another prank. They're throwing toilet paper all over the place, and they're trying to embrace the fun. And he asks where Jeremy is tonight, and Bonnie says she hasn't spoken to him all day because they're having issues ever since he told her that he's been seeing Anna and Vicky. And she's like, I'm sorry, Matt, this must be weird for you with her being your sister and all. And he's like, no, I'm glad you know. And he's like, you know, I just really want to talk to her, get to say goodbye. He then reminisces about how simple their lives were last summer when him and Bonnie were both lifeguards together, and his biggest problems in life was that Elena was going to break up with him and he sucked at doing CPR. And now Elena's dating a vampire, Bonnie's a witch, and his sister's a ghost. And he's just the guy wondering how life got so screwed up. Bonnie sympathizes with Matt, saying she can't imagine what this is like for him, and he just says it explains why he's not so into senior prank night. He then leaves to get some more rolls of toilet paper from the bathroom, and one of the stalls opens on its own, and he goes to check it out, and he sees written on the wall in Sharpie, R.I.P. Vicky Donovan. And as he walks out, Vicky's ghost is behind him saying, I can help you, Maddie, but obviously he can't hear her. So back in the gym, Elena asks Klaus where Stefan is, and he says that he's on a timeout. Then Matt and Bonnie shows up. She's surprised to see Klaus. She says that he's assuming that Bonnie is the reason that Elena's still breathing, and Bonnie's like, yes, so if you want to take it out on anyone, take it out on me. And he's like, no, it's okay, no need for that. It's just that your witchy interference seems to have caused some undesirable side effect. And since she caused the problem, she's gonna have to fix it. And then Rebecca comes in dragging in Tyler. So then Klaus grabs Tyler and says every time he tries to turn a werewolf into a vampire hybrid, they die during transition. He then bites his wrist and force feeds his blood to Tyler and tells Bonnie she better find a way to save his hybrids, and for Tyler's sake, she should hurry, and then he snaps his neck. So now Tyler's in transition, and there's a chance that he can die unless Bonnie figures out a way to save Klaus's hybrids. He says he's gonna hold on to Elena for safekeeping, and then Bonnie and Matt leave the gym to go figure out the situation. Rebecca then inspects Elena, saying, so this is the latest doppelganger. The original one was much prettier. Klaus tells Rebecca to take the wolf away, and she drags Tyler's body away. Klaus whispers to Elena, saying, don't mind her, petty little thing, my sister. The dynamic between these two is just the best. I can't. So Matt's walking down the halls with Bonnie, asking what she's gonna do, and she says she doesn't know because the curse that Klaus is talking about is over 1,000 years old, and her grimoires don't go that far back. And he asks if she can ask the dead witches for help, and she says, not since I brought Jeremy back to life. They've cut contact with me. And that's when Bonnie realizes that Jeremy can talk to the dead, so he can talk to the spirits. So their next mission is to try and find him. But what we know is that Jeremy is with Damon and Catherine. So as Jeremy's laying unconscious, Catherine tells Damon that there's a way to kill Klaus, officially, not just dagger dead. She brings up her old friend Pearl, Anna's mother, who she knew back in 1864, who knew of a vampire who knew how to kill Klaus, but she wouldn't tell her because it was her leverage. But she only told one other person, her daughter Anna, which brings them right back to, and then Jeremy wakes up and says, to me, brings you right back to me. Back at the high school, Stefan comes into the gym ignoring Elena and tells Klaus that he's come to ask for his forgiveness and pledge his loyalty. Klaus said that he broke that pledge once already, and Stefan says that Elena means nothing to him anymore, and whenever Klaus asks of him, he will do. So Klaus says, let's drink to that, and tells Stefan to kill those high school students, Dana and Chad. He hesitates, and Elena tells Stefan not to do it because Klaus isn't gonna hurt her, but then Klaus vamp slaps Elena across the face and she goes flying. Stefan charges to Klaus and he grabs him, saying, she means nothing to you. Your lies just keep piling up. Stefan says to let Elena go and he'll do whatever Klaus wants. He has his word, and Klaus says, I lived by your word all summer, at which point I never had to resort to this. He then tells Stefan to stop fighting, and Stefan begs him not to, and Klaus says all he wanted was his allegiance. Now he's gonna have to take it from him. And then he compels Stefan, saying he will do exactly as he says. When he says it, he will not fight, he will just obey. Elena freaks seeing the life drain from Stefan's eyes, and Klaus tells Stefan, now come on, Ripper, have a drink. His eyes go red and veiny as he looks at Dana and Chad, and they're pretty much done for. So back with Damon and Catherine on the side of the road in some random location, Jeremy tells him that this isn't gonna work, and Catherine's reading a bunch of texts from Bonnie asking where Jeremy is, and she's like, I think your witchy girlfriend is afraid you've run off with your ghosty lover. Jeremy gets pissed and tries to grab the phone. Catherine backs away, and Damon's like, stop with the teeny boppy drama, okay? Then Anna shows up and tells Jeremy that she's not gonna help them, because even though they're trying to find a way to kill Klaus, Catherine is no friend to him. Jeremy relays this information back to them, and Catherine takes Damon to the side, saying, if they want to make an omelet, you're gonna have to break a few legs. Damon then says sorry to Jeremy and slams his head against the picnic table. He starts bleeding, like, what the hell? And Damon's like, come on, Anna, you better tell us, otherwise your boyfriend's really gonna get hurt. So Anna reveals to Jeremy that they're looking for for someone named Michael. He's a vampire who hunts vampires, and they don't want to wake him. He will kill them all. So this is who Klaus is afraid of, huh? And the guy that we saw in the flashback in episode 3. So Caroline wakes up next to Tyler, who's unconscious, and she sees Rebecca there scrolling through her phone, and she asks what she did to him, and Rebecca's like, think of it like him having a nap, and if he wakes up, he might become a hybrid. She continues scrolling through her phone, like, oh, what an interesting device, because remember, she's been daggered since the 20s. I think it must be Elena's phone, because she scrolls onto a picture of Elena with Stefan, and she's just like, ugh, vomit. And then she zooms in and sees Elena's necklace, and she's like to Caroline, what is that doppelganger bitch doing with my necklace? So Rebecca storms into the gym asking where it is. Klaus is like, where's what? And she's like, my necklace. And she's like, my necklace, she has it. And Klaus looks at Stefan like, what do you know? More lies. Elena says she doesn't have it anymore. And then Rebecca says she's lying. Vamp speeds over to her and sinks her fangs into her. Klaus pulls Rebecca off of Elena and tells her to knock it off. And she's like, make her give it back, Nick. And Elena's like, I swear I don't have it, okay? Catherine stole it. And Klaus is like, oh, yes, of course, Katerina. Oh, that's a shame. If your witch had the necklace, it would have made this a lot easier. And he's like, you know what? Why don't we put a clock on it? And then he puts a 20-minute timer on like the basketball clock thing, which to like incentivize them. But Bonnie doesn't even know about the timer. So how does that work? Anyway, he compels Stefan that if Bonnie hasn't figured it out by the time the timer goes off, he wants her to feed on Elena until she dies. And if she tries to run away, fracture her spine. And then him and Rebecca leave, and it's just Elena and Stefan staring at each other like, holy shit. So Matt's in the gym collecting all of his stuff, not sure why this is a priority right now, and he's on the phone with Bonnie saying she can't get a hold of Jeremy, so she needs him to come and drive her to Jeremy's house. And he's like, okay, just grabbing my stuff first and then I'll meet you there. But when he's in the gym, he sees that all of his stuff is like strewn all over the floor, and it's like in a trail, and he follows it where he sees that his keys are at the bottom of the pool. So he starts taking off his clothes because he's gonna have to dive to the bottom of the pool to get it. And Vicky's ghost is behind him like, Maddie, I can help you just have to hear me. And he still can't hear her, obviously, so she uses her like ghost voodoo magic to knock his shoe into the pool, and then a ding goes off on his phone, and he sees a text who he assumes is Vicky because the text says, I can help you, Maddie, and that was her nickname for him. So then we see that Matt is walking out of the gym holding a bunch of weights, and he calls Bonnie, who's still in the parking lot, saying that this might sound kind of crazy, but Vicky's trying to reach out to him, and he thinks that she might know a way to save Tyler. And Bonnie's like, no, Matt, Jeremy can help save Tyler. And he's like, we don't know where Jeremy is, Bonnie, okay? We need to try something else. He tells Bonnie to meet him at the gym, and she's really confused, and he's like, you know how you brought Jeremy back to life? I need you to do that for me. And she's like, Matt, I told you I have no contact with the witch spirits anymore. And he's like, you don't need magic, Bonnie. You just need to be better at CPR than I was. He hangs up the phone. Bonnie realizes what's going on and starts running. And we see as she's running through the halls trying to get to the pool that Matt has tied a bunch of those weights to his waist. He jumps to the bottom of the pool and starts drowning until he dies. This man is crazy. Like, who just decides to do that off a whim? So Bonnie's been sprinting and she makes it to the pool where Matt's dead body is floating at the bottom. She dives under, takes the weights off of him, and lifts him back to the surface and gives him CPR. At first, he's not waking up, and she starts banging on his chest, and then he coughs out water, and Matt is alive. Yay! So back with Damon, he's found the keys that he's thrown and asked Catherine for his phone back. He gets it and sees that he has a bunch of texts from Bonnie that Klaus has come after Elena. So obviously he wants to leave, and Catherine's trying to stop him like, Damon, focus on the bigger picture here. He gives Jeremy the car keys and tells him to stay with Catherine so that Anna can guide them to Michael. As he's walking away, Catherine tells him that he's going to get himself killed, and the Damon that she knew wouldn't be that stupid. But then he says that he wouldn't have done it for her. She looks like offended. I don't know why she always looks offended. Like, Damon has made it clear that he thinks you're shit, Catherine. I love you though. Love you, boo. So back in the gym, Stefan is like freaking out as the timer goes down, and Elena tells him that he just needs to resist the compulsion like how Caroline's dad did. And he's like, oh yeah, it's that easy, right? Just decades of training and I can resist the urge. And she's like, Stefan, you can control it. When that buzzer goes off, just feed from me. And he's like, Elena, you don't get it. I'm a ripper. A ripper doesn't stop. And as I listen to the words coming out of your mouth, all I can hear is the sound of your heart pumping blood through your body. And when that timer goes off, I'm gonna have to feed on you. And the worst part is, I'm not gonna be able to stop. Elena says she doesn't believe that and that he can fight it. He just has to want it bad enough. And he's like, why? Because I love you? And she's like, yes, Stefan, because you love me and you'll fight for that. Because after everything that we've been through together, you owe me that. It's like, just... oh, it's a lot. And he's like, you're right, Elena. I owe you everything. Because through all of this, you're the one who stopped me from giving in and turning off my humanity. But I can't help what I am, Elena. The more blood that I get, the more I want. And if I get so much as a drop of yours, you're dead. Then there's 5 minutes left on the timer. Oh my god, the stakes were so high in this episode. So in some classroom, Tyler wakes up and asks Caroline what's going on. She stumbles over her word, and Rebecca's like, don't be shy about it. So Caroline tells Tyler that Klaus is trying to turn him into a hybrid, and Rebecca's like, don't leave out the best bit. And Rebecca tells Tyler that if Bonnie doesn't figure a workaround around the curse, he's basically dead. He starts panicking, and Caroline's trying to console him, and Rebecca flips her on the phone with 2 minutes saying, tick-tock goes the gym clock. So Matt's walking through the halls with Bonnie, saying that Vicky has a message for her, because I forgot to mention this, but while Matt was dead, he went into this like other state of reality, and it was like really dark and weird and gloomy, and Vicky was there, and he asked where he was, what this place is, and she says she didn't have time to explain it because she needs him to get a message across to Bonnie. So the message that Matt passes on to Bonnie is that Elena shouldn't have survived Klaus's ritual. That's why his hybrids can't survive. They then realize that that means Tyler's gonna die, but then Klaus shows up and is like, I wouldn't be so sure about that, because when push comes to shove, if it comes to doppelganger or hybrid, I'm picking hybrid every time. So back in the gym, the countdown is almost down to 0, and Stefan's struggling fighting the compulsion and tells Elena that she needs to run, and she's like, but Klaus says, and he's like, it doesn't matter, Elena, because if the buzzer goes off, I'm not gonna be able to stop. And she's like, Stefan, I love you, don't give up, you can fight. And he says he can't hold it anymore, and he starts charging towards her, but he like slams himself into the bleachers. She freaks out, he screams at her to run, so she does. Elena gets into another part of the hall and locks the door behind her, but then Klaus finds her, and Stefan is like vamp speeding into lockers trying to stop himself from attacking her. He makes his way into the cafeteria where he breaks a broom over his knee and stakes himself to weaken himself. Klaus then walks in, dragging in Elena like, you know, this is interesting, I've never seen this before. The only thing stronger than your lust for blood is your love for this one girl. Klaus tells Stefan to turn it off because this guilt and this humanity, it must be killing him. Stefan refuses, he's grunting and screaming, and Klaus keeps egging him on. Stefan then shoves Klaus out the way like, no, and then Klaus vamp speeds, pins him against the wall, and he compels Stefan, screaming, turn it off! It's like a really iconic moment. And then Elena looks at Stefan as the true life force fades out of his eyes, like the magic of acting that Paul Wesley does in the shift in his eyes as you see the humanity drain from him. Because this is something that we explored in season 1 and season 2, is that vampires in this universe have an ability to turn off their humanity, which sends them into their full, you know, vampire predatory nature, so that they no longer feel those like human emotions and they can be their true predatory self, right? Which Stefan holds onto his humanity. It's what keeps him sane. And then Elena looks at Stefan and then looks at Klaus and asks what he did to him, and Klaus said he fixed him. He then goes over to Elena and holds her shoulders and tells Stefan, now Ripper, why don't you take a drink from the doppelganger's neck? Stefan, with no humanity left in him, walks towards Elena with the killer look in his eyes. He vamp speeds towards her, pounces on her neck, and the screen goes black. Oh, it's so sad, because like this wasn't his choice. His freedom, his humanity got taken away from him by Klaus. So Klaus then goes to the caution that Rebecca's in and tells her that the verdict is in. The original witch says that the doppelganger should be dead. Rebecca asks if they can kill her then, and Klaus is like, quite the opposite, I'm sure. Rebecca's like, what? So then she grabs a hold of Caroline and holds her back. Klaus then goes over to Tyler with a vial of the doppelganger Elena's blood and says to drink it if he wants to survive. But he's freaking out, so he ends up just drinking the vial of blood. His eyes then change to a different color, the fangs come out, he's become a hybrid. He starts screaming in pain as the transition completes, and Klaus smiles and is like, now that's a good sign. So Klaus has cracked the code on how to make hybrids. We'll touch on this in a little bit. So Elena wakes up in the hospital with a bandage around her neck, and a nurse shows up, and Elena asks if she can leave, but the nurse is like, no honey, you've lost way too much blood. Elena then looks down to see that she is having blood taken from her body, not infused, and Elena's like, you're taking my blood? And the nurse is like, of course, it's very important for your friend Klaus. Elena then freaks out, realizing she's compelled, and tries to break free, but the nurse is like, don't fight me honey, and she injects Elena with a sedative so she falls asleep. In the hospital parking lot, Rebecca is talking to Klaus, confirming that when it comes to him making hybrids, the doppelganger being alive isn't the problem, her blood is the solution. She asks how Klaus knew that, and Klaus says that the original witch hated him so much, so he just did the opposite of what she told him. He says it makes sense in hindsight that Elena's blood is the solution to him making his hybrids, because it was the original witch's failsafe if he ever broke the curse, that the doppelganger would die in the ritual, so he wouldn't have her blood to make more hybrids. So yeah, the original witch is like something that we've obviously been speaking about a little bit here and there. And although we have this vampire Michael who hunts other vampires, the original witch is on a whole nother level. So we've got villain build up. One thing about the Vampire Diaries, it knows how to build up a villain. For the most part. Anyway, when Klaus says the whole thing about the original witch's failsafe of the doppelganger dying so he wouldn't have her blood to make hybrids, he says he would have been alone forever. And Rebecca's like, is this what this is all about? You just don't want to be alone? Klaus says that what he wants is to take his girl and take his hybrid and get the hell out of this town. He says he's gonna go get Elena and asks Rebecca to go get the truck, so she leaves. But after she does, Damon shows up asking Klaus where Elena is. Klaus goes to stop Damon and says he'll have to kill him to stop him from going in there. And Klaus is like, well, you know, I made the pledge to your brother that I would keep you alive, but you know, I don't really think he would care anymore. Klaus pins Damon to a car and he's about to rip out his heart, but Damon stops him saying, don't you want to hear about your friend Michael? Klaus asks what he knows of this, and Damon says he knows that Michael's here. Catherine and him found Michael. Consider it their leverage. Klaus looks really scared and he just drops Damon and disappears, so he walks into the hospital to save Elena and carries her out. So in the high school halls, Caroline's walking with Tyler asking if he's okay, and he says he feels great. He can't explain it, but it's a rush. Everything just feels better. He picks Caroline up and spins her around and makes out with her and says this year is going to be amazing. They hug, but she looks over his shoulder looking really concerned. As she should, he just became a hybrid and isn't the slightest bit traumatized. So Bonnie goes over to Matt, who's in the gym, and she says she could still use a ride over to Jeremy's, and he says, okay, I'm just packing up. But then she goes and sits down with Matt and tells him that what he did was really stupid. And he's like, but it worked. And she's like, yeah, but you don't want any part of this, Matt. You were the only one who gets to live a normal life. And he's like, okay, Bonnie, I'm sorry. And then she leaves, and he hears a noise, and he's like, I said I'm sorry, Bonnie. But he turns around to see Vicky, and she's like, hi, Maddie. I'm getting chills. It's really cute. You know, as much should I talk about Matt, I do feel bad for him. He lost his sister and never got to say goodbye. His parents are nowhere to be seen and shit. So I'm glad he gets to have this moment with his sister, even though she's clearly got a secret agenda. So over in the Salvador house, Elena's sitting wrapped in a blanket, and Damon gives her some bourbon, saying it'll help her forget. And he said that there's something else that could help her forget. And she says, no compulsion. I need to remember what happened. Damon then goes to give Elena her necklace back that he stole from Catherine, but she doesn't want it, so she doesn't grab it from him. And Damon puts down the necklace and says he doesn't know what to say. Elena starts crying and asks Damon where he was, and it's really sad because So unfortunately at this point in the video, my microphone had disconnected and it was just recording the audio from my camera microphone, so it's not too great, but it's literally only the last like 2 or 3 minutes of the video, so I hope you can bear with, and I hope you're enjoying the video. If you are, give it a thumbs up. Hee thank you. I don't know, it's just sad because she was going through all of this and she was like, where were you, Damon? Like, I needed you. And he's like, I'm sorry, Elena, I will never leave you again. She smiles and nods, and it's really cute. He holds her hands, and then Stefan all of a sudden shows up, and it's like, well, isn't this cute? They let go of each other's hands, and he's like, don't stop on my account. And Damon's like, what are you doing here, brother? And he's like, last time I checked, I lived here. Pours himself a drink and says, now that Klaus is gone, he's entrusted me to keep watch of Elena until he returns. They both look at each other like, what? And Stefan goes to leave and is like, by all means, carry on. So now Stefan is back in Mystic Falls, back in the Salvador house, compelled. Humanity is off, watching over Elena for Klaus. Messed up situation. So our final scene, it's the next morning inside a crypt. Catherine breaks open the doors and she walks in with Jeremy, where there is a coffin. Everything's really dusty and crusty. She grunts as she uses her vamp strength to push off the lid of the coffin, and inside we see a man. That same man in the flashbacks in episode 3 who was looking for Rebecca and Klaus. He's all grey and like veins all up. He looks dead and he's covered in chains, but then he opens his eyes, and that's Michael. Boom! That is the end of season 3, episode 5, The Reckoning, and the end of the final episode that I'll be discussing in chapter 1 of season 3, self-titled The Hybrid and the Ripper. So this chapter answered a lot of questions about Klaus becoming a hybrid, how he was able to figure out how he can turn his hybrids. Turns out he needs Elena's blood for that. Now Klaus knows that Elena's alive. They found Stefan, but Klaus has made Stefan turn off his humanity, so that means he's like all vamp speed ripper shit. Him and Elena's relationship is in a bad spot. He fed on her. He's not himself anymore, really. Elena and Damon grow closer together as she goes further from Stefan. Catherine is having her diabolical plan with Damon to try and find the secret weapon to use against Klaus, which we now know is a vampire hunter named Michael who knows of a way to kill him. And also, Matt can speak to his sister Vicky. Jeremy is speaking to Anna. They're both ghosts. Anna is saying that there's a darkness around Vicky and Jeremy can't trust her. Tyler just became Klaus's first successful hybrid, and Caroline's really concerned about that. These episodes were a great start to the season. It sets up a lot of questions to be answered throughout the season, sets up the stakes, starts building on some villains. You know, we got the vampire hunter, we got the original witch, and I'm really excited to get into the next 4 episodes that will answer a lot of the questions that we have established right now in these 5 episodes. And that video will be coming out a week from now, so make sure you're subscribed and have the post notifications bell on so you don't miss it. I hope that you enjoyed this chapter. I had so much fun filming this video, making it. It's always a hoot making these videos, and if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, comment down below your thoughts, subscribe and turn on the bell if you haven't, give the video a share. Just show me some love. I put a lot of effort into these videos, so I'd really appreciate it. And also, if you want more bonus Vampire Diaries content, remember to check out my Patreon. I post a companion series over there. We watch scenes together, react to them, and do storyline breakdowns, so please check that out. As always, shout out to all my patrons for your support. And also, thank you so much to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. Make sure you click the link in my description to get that discount. Anyway, guys, that's it for me in this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in my next video. And as always, I hope that you have a great day or night wherever you're in the world. Bye!